Chapter 1. Kaelen. The rain in this city did not wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. I stood under the overhang of the abandoned shipyard warehouse and watched the water drip off the rusted corrugated metal. My suit was dry, but the dampness was seeping into my bones. I hated peace treaties. War was honest. You knew who wanted to kill you, and you killed them first. Peace was just a lie everyone agreed to tell until the ammunition was restocked. Nikolai had sent me to collect the collateral. That was the polite word for it. Hostage was the real word. I checked my watch. Julian Vance was 2 minutes late. For a man who dealt in precision weaponry and high-stakes international arms deals, the man had terrible time management skills. Or he was making a power play. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I knew it was Nikolai asking if the package was secured. Not yet. Headlights cut through the downpour, blinding and white. 2 black SUVs rolled into the lot, tires crunching over gravel and broken glass. They parked in a V formation, defensive driving. Cute. I stepped out from the overhang. I didn't draw my weapon, but I let my coat fall open just enough to show the holster on my hip. It was a warning. I was the Reaper. I didn't need to brandish a gun to be the most dangerous thing in the parking lot. The doors of the lead SUV opened. Julian Vance stepped out. An umbrella snapped open instantly, held by a guard who looked like he had been built in a lab from leftover slabs of meat. Julian smoothed his lapels. He looked bored. He looked like he was dropping off dry cleaning, not his own flesh and blood. Mr. Thorne. Julian smiled. It was a shark's smile, all teeth and no warmth. I trust the Kovacs family is satisfied with the terms. We will see, I said. My voice was a gravel grind. I didn't do small talk. Where is she? Julian gestured to the second car. The back door opened. I expected a lot of things. I expected a screaming brat in designer heels who would threaten to call her daddy every 5 minutes. I expected tears. I expected a woman who looked like she came from money, polished and shiny and soft. A girl stepped out into the rain. She had no umbrella. The water hit her immediately, soaking into a threadbare gray sweater that looked 3 sizes too big. She wore jeans that had paint stains on the thighs and scuffed combat boots. Her hair was dark, plastered to her skull by the rain, dripping down a face that was pale and completely blank. No tears. No screaming. She didn't even look at her father. She dragged a single, battered suitcase out of the back seat. It hit the wet asphalt with a heavy thud. "Elara," Julian said. His voice had a sharp edge to it, like a whip crack. "Behave yourself. Mr. Thorne here has a reputation. If you annoy him, he might just bury you in the foundation of one of his buildings." He laughed. He actually laughed. Elara didn't flinch. She just looked at him. Her eyes were dark, almost black, in this light. There was nothing in them. No fear. No anger. Just a hollow emptiness that unsettled me more than a loaded gun. She turned and walked toward me. She didn't wait for a goodbye. She didn't look back. She stopped 3 feet away, the rain soaking her to the bone, and looked up at me. "I am ready," she said. Her voice was soft, rough from disuse. I looked at Julian. He was already getting back into his warm, dry car. He didn't care. He was handing over his daughter to the enemy's enforcer, and he looked like he was relieved. That set off alarms in my head. Why give her up so easily? "Drive carefully," Julian called out. The window rolled up. The SUVs reversed and peeled out of the lot, leaving us alone in the dark, wet shipyard. I looked down at the girl. She was shivering now. The cold was getting to her even if she wouldn't admit it. "Get in the car," I said. I grabbed her suitcase. It was lighter than I expected. What did she have in here? Air. She walked to my car, a matte black sedan that cost more than most houses in this district. She opened the door and slid in. I threw her bag in the trunk and got in the driver's side. The interior was warm, smelling of leather and the faint scent of my cigarettes. She sat with her hands folded in her lap. She didn't buckle her seatbelt. "Buckle up," I said. She stared out the window. I leaned over. I didn't mean to crowd her, but the car wasn't that big, and I was a large man. I reached across her chest to grab the belt. She froze. She didn't pull away, but her breath hitched. I could smell her now. She didn't smell like expensive perfume. She smelled like rain and turpentine and something sweet, like vanilla. My forearm brushed against her breast as I clicked the belt into place. It was an accident. An electric jolt went straight down my spine. I pulled back, gripping the steering wheel tight. "Sorry," I grunted. She didn't answer. She just stared at the dashboard. I started the engine and pulled out onto the main road. The silence in the car was heavy. Usually people talked when they were nervous. They babbled, they begged, they threatened. Elara Vance did nothing. She was like a ghost haunting my passenger seat. "So," I said, breaking the silence because I couldn't stand it. "You know what this is? I am a transaction," she said. She traced a pattern on the foggy window with her finger. "Peace for a price." "You are a hostage," I corrected her. "If your father steps out of line, you pay the debt." She turned her head slowly to look at me. In the passing streetlights, I saw her face clearly for the first time. She had high cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it was made for sin, full and pink. But there was a smudge on her jaw. Dirt, or a bruise covered with cheap makeup. "He will step out of line," she said matter-of-factly. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "You think he doesn't care about your safety?" "I think Julian Vance cares about Julian Vance," she said. She turned back to the window. She called him by his first name, not Dad, not Father. Julian. We drove through the city, moving from the industrial rot of the docks to the sleek, cold skyline of downtown, my territory. The Kovacs syndicate owned this concrete jungle, and I was the gardener who pulled the weeds. My home was called the Spire. It was a fortress of concrete and glass, rising high above the rest of the city. It was ugly, brutal, and impenetrable. Just how I liked it. I pulled into the underground garage. The heavy steel gate rattled shut behind us, sealing us in. "Out," I said. She got out. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase, but I snatched it from her. "I got it," I snapped. She let go immediately, putting her hands up slightly, as if she expected me to hit her. I scowled. I was a killer, yes. I had blood on my hands that would never wash off, but I didn't hit women. Especially not women who looked like a stiff breeze would knock them over. I led her to the elevator. We rode up in silence. The numbers ticked higher. 40, 50, 60, the penthouse. The doors opened into my living room. It was a cavernous space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights. The furniture was black leather and chrome. No photos, no plants, no life. Elara stepped inside. She shivered again. Her clothes were still soaked. She was dripping on my polished concrete floors. "Where do I sleep?" she asked. I pointed down the hall. "Second door on the left. There is a bathroom attached. Don't leave the apartment. The windows are reinforced. The doors are biometric. You can't get out unless I let you out." She nodded. "Okay." She started walking toward the room. She looked small in this big, empty space. "Vance?" I called out. She stopped and turned. "Why didn't you fight him?" I asked. I really wanted to know. Most people fought for their freedom. She looked at me, and for a second, the mask slipped. I saw exhaustion so deep it looked like it hurt physically. "There's nowhere to go," she said. "Here, there. It is all just a cage. At least this one has a view." She turned and walked into the bedroom, closing the door with a soft click. I stood there in the middle of my living room, the scent of vanilla and rain lingering in the air. I looked at the puddle of water she had left on the floor. I should have felt triumphant. We had the leverage. We had the Vance heiress. But as I stared at that closed door, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like I had just brought a bomb into my house, and I had no idea when it was going to explode. I loosened my tie and walked to the liquor cabinet. I poured 3 fingers of whiskey and downed it in one burn. This was going to be a long assignment. I walked down the hall. I stopped outside her door. I could hear movement inside, the rustle of fabric. Then silence. I put my hand on the door frame. I should check on her, make sure she wasn't trying to kill herself or sabotage the security. That was my job. But I didn't. I walked to my own room, stripped off my gun holster, and tossed it on the bed. I closed my eyes, but all I could see were those dead, black eyes staring up at me in the rain. I am ready. Ready for what, Elara? I had a feeling I was going to find out, and I wasn't sure I was going to like the answer. The girl was broken. I knew broken things. I was broken myself. But usually broken things had sharp edges. She seemed smooth, worn down. I went to the shower to wash the city off my skin. But even under the scalding water, I couldn't wash away the feeling of her soft breast brushing against my arm, or the smell of her. Focus, Kaelen. She is the enemy. She is a pawn. But pawns were usually the first to die, and looking at her tonight, I realized something inconvenient. I didn't want her to die. I turned the water off and stared at the drain. Fuck, this was definitely going to be a problem.
Chapter 2. Elara. The spire was not a home. It was a mausoleum made of concrete and glass. I woke up before the sun. My body was still on the schedule of the Vance estate where sleeping in meant punishment. The bed Kaelen had given me was huge. It was soft enough to swallow me whole, but I had slept on the very edge of the mattress, curled into a tight ball. Old habits did not die just because the location changed. I sat up and looked out the window. The city was a gray smear below us. We were so high up the clouds drifted past the glass like ghosts trying to get in. I was alone. I didn't know where Kaelen was. I assumed he was out doing whatever enforcers did. Breaking bones, collecting debts, being the monster my father had sold me to. I got up and dressed in the same clothes I had arrived in. My jeans were dry now, but they felt stiff. I washed my face in the bathroom attached to my room. The water was hot. Instant. At the estate, the water took 10 minutes to warm up in the servants' wing where my room was. Here, everything was efficient, expensive, cold. I stepped out into the hallway. The silence was heavy. It pressed against my ears. "Hello," I whispered. No answer. I walked into the living room. It was exactly as I remembered from last night. Immaculate. Sterile. There wasn't a single personal item anywhere. No books. No mail on the counter. No throw pillows. It looked like a showroom for people who hated comfort. I was hungry, but I didn't dare touch the sleek black refrigerator. I didn't know the rules yet. At the Vance estate, taking food without permission resulted in a locked door and a hungry belly for 2 days. I wasn't going to risk it here. Not with a man called the Reaper. I needed to do something with my hands. If I didn't keep my hands busy, my mind started to eat itself. It started to replay the look on Julian's face when he handed me over. The indifference, the relief. I paced the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4. I saw a piece of paper on the kitchen island. It was a receipt for gasoline and cigarettes. I picked it up. The back was blank. It was trash. Surely he wouldn't mind if I used trash. I patted my pockets and found the stub of a pencil I had managed to smuggle out. It was small, barely an inch long, but it was sharp. I sat on one of the leather bar stools and smoothed the receipt out on the granite counter. The white space called to me. It was a relief. It was a place where I could make something exist that wasn't pain. I started to draw. I didn't draw the city or the room. I drew him. I didn't mean to. My hand just moved. I drew the sharp line of his jaw, the heavy brow, the way his coat hung off his broad shoulders like armor. He was made of hard angles and deep shadows. He was a fascinating subject. Terrifying, but fascinating. I got lost in the shading. I forgot where I was. I forgot that I was a hostage in the sky. For 20 minutes, I wasn't Elara Vance, the useless daughter. I was just a hand holding a pencil. The sound of the elevator chiming made me jump. I nearly snapped the pencil point. I tried to hide the receipt, but my hands were shaking. The heavy steel doors slid open, and Kaelen walked in. He brought the weather with him. The smell of rain and ozone clung to his coat. He looked tired. His tie was gone, and the top button of his shirt was undone, revealing the hollow of his throat and a hint of dark ink on his skin. He stopped when he saw me. His gaze snapped to my face, then down to my hands on the counter. The air in the room changed instantly. It went from empty to charged, dangerous. "What are you doing?" he asked. His voice was low, a rumble that vibrated in the floorboards. "Nothing," I said. I slid the receipt under my hand. He moved fast. For a big man, he moved like smoke. He was across the kitchen in 2 strides. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron, but he didn't squeeze. He just moved my hand away. He looked at the drawing. I held my breath. I waited for the anger. I waited for him to tell me I was wasting time, that I was garbage, that art was for people who mattered. He stared at the sketch. His eyes narrowed. The charcoal lines on the receipt captured the darkness in his eyes perfectly. "You are mapping the layout," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "What?" I asked, my voice cracked. "You are drawing me. You are watching me." He looked at me with cold disgust. "Did Julian tell you to profile me, find my weaknesses, send the intel back home?" "No," I whispered. "No, I just—" He didn't listen. He snatched the receipt off the counter. "Stop," I said. "Please." He crushed the paper in his fist. The sound of the crinkling paper was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He didn't just crumple it. He ripped it. Once. Twice. He tore the small drawing into confetti. He opened his hand and let the pieces drift down to the polished floor. They settled around his boots like dirty snow. "Do not spy on me, Elara," he warned. "I will not tolerate a rat in my house. If you want to survive here, you will learn to be invisible." He turned his back on me. He walked to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and slammed the door shut. I stood there. My hand was still hovering in the air where he had grabbed it. I didn't cry. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Tears made your eyes puffy, and Julian hated ugly things. I learned a long time ago that tears only made the punishment last longer. I looked at the pieces of paper on the floor. My art. My distraction. Gone in seconds. It was okay. I was used to it. Julian used to burn my sketchbooks in the fireplace while I watched. Ripping was cleaner. Less smoke. I slid off the stool. I crouched down on the floor. "What are you doing?" Kaelen asked. He hadn't left the room. He was watching me. I am cleaning up, I said softly. I picked up the tiny scraps of paper one by one. I gathered them in my palm. I made sure I got every single piece. I didn't want to leave a mess. I didn't want to give him a reason to be angry again. The silence stretched out. It wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was something else. Confusion. Kaelen didn't move. I could feel his eyes on the back of my neck. I stood up and walked to the trash can. I dumped the remains of the drawing inside. "I'm sorry," I said. "It won't happen again." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. If I looked at him, he might see the hollowness inside me, and that was the only thing I had left to hide. I walked back to my room. I didn't run. Running implied guilt. I just walked. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. I stared at my hands. They were stained gray from the pencil lead. I waited for him to come in. To yell. To demand more answers. He didn't come. I stayed in my room for hours. I watched the sun move across the floor. My stomach growled, a painful twisting knot, but I ignored it. Hunger was familiar. Hunger was safe. Around sunset, there was a knock on my door. It was a sharp rap. 1, 2. "Elara," his voice came through the wood. I stood up. I smoothed my sweater. I opened the door. Kaelen was standing there. He had changed out of his suit into a black t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked less like a corporate killer, and more like a boxer who had just gone 12 rounds. The tattoos on his arms were fully visible now, intricate sleeves of skulls and thorns that disappeared under his sleeves. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the doorframe, his jaw tight. He held something out to me. I flinched. I couldn't help it. My body reacted before my brain did. I took a half step back. Kaelen froze. His eyes snapped to mine. He saw the flinch. A shadow passed over his face. Not anger. Something else. "Take it," he said. His voice was gruff. I looked at what he was holding. It was a sketchbook. A real one. Hardcover, bound in black linen, and a set of graphite pencils. The expensive kind. I looked up at him, confused. "Why?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight. "You aren't a spy," he said. He ran a hand through his dark hair, messing it up. "Spies don't clean up the mess when they get caught. They beg. They make excuses. You just accepted it." I took the book. It was heavy. It felt solid in my hands. "Thank you," I whispered. He grunted. "Don't thank me. Just don't draw on my trash. I can afford paper." He turned to leave, then stopped. He didn't look back at me. "There is food on the counter. Eat it. That's an order." He walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the living room. I closed the door and leaned against it, clutching the sketchbook to my chest. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I walked to the bed and sat down. I opened the book. The paper was crisp, white, and perfect. It smelled like new possibilities. I picked up a pencil. My hand hovered over the page. I didn't draw him this time. I drew the view from the window. The city, lights below, glittering like diamonds in the mud. "A cage with a view," I had told him. But as I sketched, I thought about the look on his face when I flinched. I thought about the sketchbook. Maybe this cage was different. I ate the sandwich he left. It was roast beef with arugula on artisan bread. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. I ate it standing in the kitchen, in the dark, watching the red light of the security system blink on the wall. I was a ghost in the spire. But for the first time in my life, someone had seen me. He had terrified me, destroyed my work, and then given me the tools to do it again. Kaelen Thorne was a puzzle I couldn't solve. He was violence and mercy wrapped in a black suit. I went back to my room, but I left the door cracked open just an inch. Just enough to let the light from the hallway in. Just enough to prove I wasn't completely alone.
Chapter 3. Kaelen. The coffee in my mug was black, bitter, and hot enough to strip the lining off my throat. It was the only thing keeping me upright. I hadn't slept well. Knowing there was a Vance in my house, sleeping down the hall, was like trying to nap with a live grenade under the pillow. Every creak of the floorboards woke me up. I laid there in the dark, hand on my gun, waiting for an attack that never came. Elara Vance was quiet. Too quiet. I checked the time. Row 700 hours. The city was waking up, which meant the rats were crawling out of the sewers, and I had work to do. The Kovacs syndicate didn't run itself. There were collections to be made in the gambling district and a shipping dispute at the docks that required my specific brand of negotiation. But I couldn't leave her alone. I wasn't worried she would escape. The spire was locked down tighter than a bank vault. I was worried she would wither. That was the word that kept popping into my head. She looked fragile, like something that needed sunlight and water, and I lived in a concrete box. The intercom buzzed. I walked to the wall panel and checked the feed. Nikolai. And he wasn't alone. I hit the release button. A minute later, the elevator doors slid open. Nikolai Kovac stepped out. He looked like a king, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, his dark hair slicked back. He carried himself with the easy grace of a man who owned the pavement he walked on. Trailing behind him was a woman who looked like she had just rolled out of a dumpster fight and won. Mia, or as she preferred to be called on the payroll, Echo. She was small, wiry, with hair dyed a violent shade of blue that was currently fading into seafoam green. She wore cargo pants with too many pockets and a tank top that showed off arms corded with lean muscle. She was chewing gum with her mouth open. "Morning, sunshine," Echo said. She popped a bubble. I didn't smile. What is she doing here? Nikolai walked to the kitchen island, eyeing the coffee pot. I pointed him to a clean mug. "You have work to do, Kaelen," Nikolai said. He poured himself a cup. "We have a situation in Sector 4. The Italians are getting bold. I need you on the street, not playing nursemaid to our guest." I looked at Echo. She was currently inspecting my liquor cabinet, tapping the glass with a fingernail. "She is the babysitter," I asked. "She is the security detail," Nikolai corrected. "Echo has been with us for 5 years. She is capable." I knew she was capable. I had seen her take apart a man twice her size using nothing but a ballpoint pen and a bad attitude. That wasn't the problem. The problem was she didn't have an off switch. Echo turned around, leaning back against the cabinet. "Don't look so worried, Reaper. I won't break her. Unless she tries to stab me. Then I might break a finger. Just a pinky." "Where is she?" Nikolai asked. "Sleeping," I said. "Or hiding." "I'm awake." We all turned. Elara was standing in the hallway, entrance. She was wearing the oversized sweater again. It swallowed her hands. She looked from Nikolai to Echo, her expression wary but guarded. She didn't flinch this time. "Good morning, Elara," Nikolai said. His voice was smooth, charming. It was the voice he used right before he ordered an execution. "I hope your accommodations are satisfactory." She nodded once. "Yes, thank you." I walked over to her. I didn't mean to tower over her, but I couldn't help my height. I stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "I have to go out," I told her. "This is Echo. She is going to stay with you." Elara looked at the girl with the blue hair. Echo grinned, a feral showing of teeth. "Hi," Echo said. "I like your boots. Combat standard?" Elara blinked. She looked down at her scuffed boots, then back at Echo. Yes, cool. I'm wearing steel toes, great for kicking shins. Echo pushed off the cabinet and walked toward us. She moved with a predator's grace, silent and fluid. Elara stiffened. I saw her weight shift to her back foot, preparing to run or fight. Relax, I said softly. She is on our side. For now, Echo joked. She stopped in front of Elara and tilted her head. You look like you need a drink, or a weapon. I need coffee, Elara said. Echo laughed. It was a loud, barking sound that echoed in the high ceilings of the penthouse. I like her. She's got priorities. Nikolai set his mug down. Kaelen, a word. I followed him to the window, leaving the two women by the kitchen. How is she? Nikolai asked, keeping his voice low. Quiet, I said. Strange. Julian broke her, Nico. He didn't just neglect her, he hollowed her out. Nikolai stared at Elara's back. She was watching Echo fiddle with the coffee machine. She is valuable, Nikolai said. If Julian wants her back, he will have to bleed for her. Keep her safe. Keep her close. I felt a twist of irritation. I am not a jailer. You are whatever the family needs you to be, he said. His eyes were hard. Don't forget that. He clapped me on the shoulder and walked toward the elevator. Echo, try not to burn the building down. No promises, boss? Nikolai left. I was alone with them. I need to go, I said to the room. Echo, the security protocols are active. Don't open the door for anyone unless they have my clearance code. Echo waved a hand dismissively. I know the drill. I helped install half this system, remember? Speaking of which, she walked over to the main control panel on the wall near the door. She tapped the screen, bringing up the camera feeds. You've got a blind spot in the north corridor, she said. The camera lag is about 3 seconds. If someone knew the timing, they could slip past the sensor without triggering the alarm. I frowned. I checked that system last week. It was fine. Things degrade, Echo said. She pulled a small tablet from one of her cargo pockets and plugged it into the panel. I'm going to optimize the grid while you're gone. Reroute the feeds, tighten the latency. I'll make this place tighter than a, well, you know. Just fix it, I said. I went to my room to get my gear. I strapped on my shoulder holster, checking the Sig Sauer, loaded, safety off. I grabbed my knife and tucked it into my boot. When I came back out, the atmosphere in the kitchen had shifted. Elara was sitting on a stool. Echo was leaning on the counter, dissecting a toaster. I didn't even know I owned a toaster. So the trick is the tension, Echo was saying. She was holding a butter knife. I walked closer. They weren't talking about toast. Echo had a pair of handcuffs on the counter. My spare set. What are you doing? I asked. Teaching, Echo said. Every girl should know how to get out of zip ties and cuffs. It's a life skill, like doing taxes, but useful. Elara looked up at me. Her cheeks were flushed. There was a spark in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Interest. I watched as Elara picked up a bobby pin she must have pulled from her hair. She slid it into the locking mechanism of the cuffs. Her brow furrowed in concentration. Her hands, usually so still, were moving with surprising dexterity. She has surgeon's hands, Echo noted. Steady, click. The cuff sprang open. Elara let out a breath, a small puff of air. She looked at the open metal ring, then up at Echo. A tiny, tentative smile touched her lips. Did you see that? She whispered. I saw it. I stood there, frozen. That smile. It was like seeing a flower bloom in the middle of a landfill. It transformed her face. It made my chest ache in a way that pissed me off. Good job, Echo said. She high-fived Elara. Next, we do duct tape. I cleared my throat. The sound startled them both. Elara's smile vanished instantly, replaced by the mask of neutrality. I hated that I was the one who made it disappear. "I'm leaving," I said. My voice was rougher than I intended. Elara slid off the stool. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her. "Be safe," she said. The words stopped me. They were automatic, probably something she was trained to say to her father, but she looked like she meant it. I nodded. "Don't open the door." I walked to the elevator. As the doors closed, I watched them. Echo was already showing her something else, using the butter knife to demonstrate leverage points. Elara was leaning in, watching intently. I should have stopped it. I should have told Echo not to teach the hostage how to escape. But I didn't. Because for the first time since she arrived, Elara Vance didn't look like a prisoner. She looked like she was planning a rebellion. And God help me. I liked it. The day was a grind. I broke 3 fingers on a man who thought he could skim off the top of the casino profits. I stared down a union boss until he pissed himself. I stood in the rain and smoked half a pack of cigarettes while Nikolai negotiated a truce with the triad. It was violence and boredom in equal measure. Usually, I reveled in it. The simplicity of it, action and consequence. But today, my mind was elsewhere. It was 30 floors up, in a glass box. I kept checking my phone, looking at the security feed. At 10 a.m., they were watching cartoons. Echo was eating cereal out of the box. Elara was sketching. At 1 p.m., Echo was asleep on my expensive leather sofa, boots on the cushions. Elara was in the kitchen, organizing my spice rack by color. At 4 p.m., the camera in the hallway went dark for 10 seconds. My heart stopped. I stared at the black screen on my phone. Then it flickered back on. Echo was standing on a chair, wiping the lens with a cloth. She looked directly into the camera and flipped me off. "Optimizing," she mouthed. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That woman was going to be the death of me. I got home at 7. I was tired, hungry, and my knuckles were bruised. I unlocked the door with my biometric scan. The lights were dimmed. The smell of something spicy and rich hit me immediately. Garlic, tomato, basil. I walked into the kitchen. Echo was gone. Nikolai must have called her off once my tracker showed I was in the building. Elara was at the stove. She was stirring a large pot. She had found an apron somewhere. It was too big for her, wrapped around her waist twice. She heard me enter. She turned. She was holding a wooden spoon. "You're back?" she said. She sounded relieved. I walked over. I looked into the pot. It was pasta sauce. It smelled like heaven. "I told you there was food in the fridge," I said. "You didn't have to cook." "I wanted to," she said. She looked down at the pot. "It's safe." I tasted it. Echo tasted it. I frowned. "I wasn't worried you poisoned it." She shrugged. "You should be. If I were smart, I would have." She looked up at me through her lashes. It was a joke, a dark, twisted joke. I laughed. It was a rusty sound, scraping up my throat. "You think you could take me out with pasta?" I asked. She pointed the spoon at me. "I learned a lot today. Echo says I'm a natural at finding weak points." I stepped closer. The heat from the stove radiated between us. Or maybe it was just her. "Is that so?" I murmured. "And what is my weak point, Elara?" She looked at me. Her gaze traveled from my bruised knuckles to my eyes. She didn't back down. "You are tired," she said softly. "You carry the whole city on your back. Eventually, your knees will buckle." She reached out. For a second, I thought she was going to touch me. I wanted her to. My skin prickled with the anticipation of it. But she just reached past me and grabbed a bowl from the drying rack. "Sit," she ordered. "Eat, before you fall over." I sat. She served me a bowl of pasta. It was simple. It was perfect. We ate in silence. It wasn't the awkward silence of the first night. It was companionable. "So," I said, wiping my mouth, "did you learn how to escape today?" She took a sip of water. "I learned that handcuffs have a single locking mechanism that can be shimmed with a piece of wire. I learned that bleach and ammonia should never be mixed unless you want to clear a room. And I learned that you have a blind spot in the North Corridor cameras." I stopped chewing. "Echo told you that." She nodded. She said she fixed it, but she showed me where it was first. Just in case. "In case of what?" "In case I need to hide," she said. She stood up and took my empty bowl. I watched her walk to the sink. Echo was a liability. Telling the hostage about security flaws was a firing offense. I should call Nikolai. I should have Echo disciplined. But as I watched Elara wash the dishes, humming a quiet, tuneless melody under her breath, I realized something. I didn't care about the blind spot. Because if anyone came for her, her father, his men, or the devil himself, they wouldn't get past me. I stood up and walked to the sink. I stood behind her, close enough to feel her body heat, not close enough to touch. "Elara." She paused, her hands submerged in soapy water. "You don't need to hide," I said. "Not here." She didn't turn around. She stared out the window at the city lights. "Everyone needs to hide, Kaelen," she whispered. "Even the Reaper." She turned off the water and dried her hands. She turned to face me. We were inches apart. I could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. I could see the pulse fluttering in her throat. "Good night," she said. She slipped past me, a brush of air and vanilla, and went to her room. I stayed in the kitchen. I looked at the spot where she had been standing. I walked to the North Corridor. I looked up at the camera. The red light was steady. Echo had fixed the lag. It was secure. But I stared at it for a long time, wondering why Echo, who was loyal to a fault, would give Elara a map to the cracks in my armor. Unless Echo saw something I didn't. Or maybe she saw exactly what I was refusing to admit. That the girl wasn't the prisoner here. I was.
Chapter 4. Elara. The air in the penthouse was thin. It felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room, leaving only tension and the smell of gun oil. Kaelen was pacing. He was a big man, and he didn't pace nervously. He prowled. He moved from the window to the door and back to the kitchen island like a tiger testing the strength of its cage. I stood by the sink drying a coffee mug for the third time. My hands were red from the hot water. I liked the pain. It was grounding. It reminded me that I was real and I was here and not back in the west wing of the Vance estate waiting for my father to remember I existed. "Stop that," Kaelen said. I looked up. He had stopped moving. He was staring at my hands. "Stop what?" I asked, rubbing that mug. "You are going to sand the ceramic down to dust." I set the mug down. I put my hands behind my back. "Who is coming?" I asked. He hadn't told me. He had just woken me up at dawn and told me to get dressed. Not the jeans. He wanted me in the black dress he had ordered for me. It was simple, elegant, and cost more than a car. It felt like a costume. "Nikolai," he said. The name landed in the room like a stone dropped in water. Nikolai Kovac, the Pakan, the king of the city, the man who ordered hits the way other people ordered pizza. He was Kaelen's boss. "Why?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my heart kicked against my ribs. "Inspection," Kaelen said. He adjusted his cufflinks. He hates surprises. You are a surprise. He wants to see if you are worth the trouble. I felt a cold shiver slide down my spine. Worth the trouble. That meant he wanted to see if I was valuable leverage or if I was better off dead. What do I do? I asked. Kaelen walked over to me. He looked sharp today. Lethal. His suit was tailored to within an inch of its life, fitting his broad shoulders perfectly. He smelled of sandalwood and danger. You stand there. You speak when spoken to. You pour the wine. You do not look him in the eye unless he asks you a question. It sounded like the rules Julian gave me. Be furniture. Be pretty. Be silent. I nodded. I can do that. Kaelen reached out. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my jaw. His skin was rough, calloused from violence, but his touch was gentle. It confused me. Don't be afraid, he said quietly. I won't let him hurt you. He is your boss, I pointed out. If he tells you to hurt me, you will. Kaelen's eyes darkened. He dropped his hand. Just pour the wine, Elara. The elevator chimed. It wasn't the polite ding of a hotel elevator. It was a heavy, industrial sound. The steel doors slid open. Nikolai Kovac walked in. He was not what I expected. I expected a monster. I expected scars and ugliness. Nikolai was beautiful. He was tall, lean, and elegant. He had dark hair swept back from a face that could have been on a magazine cover, if not for the deadness in his eyes. He looked like a fallen angel who had enjoyed the fall. 2 guards stayed by the elevator. Nikolai walked into the living room alone. He didn't look at the view. He didn't look at Kaelen. He looked straight at me. It felt like being scanned by a laser. He started at my feet and worked his way up to my eyes. He didn't blink. So, Nikolai said. His voice was rich, like dark chocolate. This is the Vance girl. Elara, Kaelen corrected him. Nikolai glanced at Kaelen. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. First names. Interesting. He walked toward me. I forced myself not to step back. I planted my feet. I held my hands clasped in front of me. I was a statue. I was marble. Marble didn't bleed. Nikolai stopped 2 feet away. He smelled of expensive cologne and cold air. Your father is a difficult man, Nikolai said to me. He has cost me a lot of money and a lot of patience. I know, I said. He tilted his head. You do. Do you know why you are here? Because I am a pawn, I said. He laughed softly. A pawn? No, a pawn is useful. A pawn can become a queen if it reaches the other side of the board. You are not a pawn. You are collateral. You are an insurance policy. If Julian breaks the treaty, Kaelen mails him your fingers. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I didn't look away. I looked right at the knot of his silk tie. Kaelen stepped forward. He moved between us slightly, cutting off Nikolai's line of sight. She is not involved in the business, Nico. She barely knows what day it is. Julian kept her locked in a tower. Nikolai stepped around Kaelen. He wasn't done with me. Is that true? He asked. Are you innocent, Elara? I am ignorant, I said. There is a difference. He hummed. He walked to the sofa and sat down. He crossed one leg over the other. He looked perfectly at ease in the lion's den. Wine, he ordered. I moved to the wet bar. My legs felt like wood. I grabbed the crystal decanter. It was heavy. It was filled with a dark red vintage that probably cost thousands. I picked up 3 glasses. 2, Nikolai said. The Reaper is on the clock. He doesn't drink. I put 1 glass back. I carried the 2 glasses and the decanter to the low coffee table. I set the glasses down. I felt Kaelen watching me. I felt his tension rolling off him in waves. He was standing behind the sofa, his hand hovering near his hip. I uncorked the decanter. I lifted it to pour. And then it happened. It was subtle. It always was. Stress made it worse. Fatigue made it worse. Fear made it worse. And right now I was drowning in all three. My left hand, the one holding the neck of the heavy crystal bottle, spasmed. It wasn't a shake of fear. It wasn't a tremble. It was a rhythmic, rolling tremor. My fingers fluttered against the glass. Clink, clink, clink. The glass bottle hit the rim of the wine glass. Wine sloshed over the side, staining the white marble table red, like blood. I gasped. I tried to steady my hand, but the tremor had a mind of its own. It locked my wrist. My fingers jerked. "I am sorry," I whispered. I tried to pull the bottle back. Nikolai grabbed my wrist. His grip was fast and hard. He didn't hurt me, but he froze my hand in place. He wasn't looking at the spilled wine. He was staring at my hand, at the specific way my index and middle finger were twitching in a rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2. The room went dead silent. "What is this?" Nikolai asked. His voice was barely a whisper. I tried to pull away. "It is nothing. I am sorry. I am clumsy." "No," he said. He stood up, still holding my wrist. He brought my hand up closer to his face. He watched the tremor. It rippled through my tendons. "This is not clumsiness. This is neurological." "It happens sometimes," I stammered. "I hate it. It was my defect. The reason Julian never let me hold anything valuable. The reason I was broken goods. It is just a tremor. It runs in—" I stopped. It didn't run in the Vance family. Julian had hands like a surgeon. My mother, whoever she was, I never knew her. Nikolai looked up. His eyes met mine. For the first time since he walked in, the deadness was gone. There was something else there. Shock, confusion, and something that looked terrifyingly like recognition. He dropped my hand as if it had burned him. He stepped back. He looked at Kaelen. "Did you know?" Nikolai asked. "Know what?" Kaelen asked. He moved closer, putting himself fully between me and his boss now. He looked ready to draw his weapon. "That she shakes when you terrify her." "Yes." "I knew." "Back off, Nico." Nikolai ignored him. He looked at me again. He looked at my face, searching for something. He looked at my eyes. "Violet," he muttered. They looked black in the photo. But here, they are violet. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He grabbed the wine glass I had just poured, the one I had held, the one my fingers had brushed against. He didn't drink it. He held it by the stem. "We are done here," Nikolai said. He turned and walked toward the elevator. He moved fast, abandoning his casual grace for urgent speed. "Wait," Kaelen said. "What about the inspection?" "I have seen enough," Nikolai called back. The elevator doors opened. Nikolai stepped in, still holding the wine glass like it was the Holy Grail. He looked at me one last time before the doors closed. His expression was unreadable. Calculating, the doors shut. I let out a breath that turned into a sob. My knees gave out. Kaelen caught me before I hit the floor. He pulled me into his chest. His arms wrapped around me hard and solid. He smelled safe. I buried my face in his shirt. I was shaking all over now, not just my hand. "Did I fail?" I asked. "Is he going to kill me?" "No," Kaelen said. His voice was rough against my ear. "No." He walked me to the sofa and sat me down. He knelt in front of me. He took my hands in his. His big thumbs rubbed over my knuckles, soothing the tremor. "What happened?" Kaelen asked. He looked intently at me. "Why did he react like that?" "I don't know," I whispered. "It was just the shake. I have always had it. Since I was a baby. Julian used to hit my hand with a ruler when it happened. He said it made me look weak." Kaelen cursed softly. He lifted my hand and kissed the knuckles. His lips were warm. The sensation sent a jolt of heat through me that chased away the cold fear. "It does not make you weak," he said fiercely. He stood up and paced again. He ran a hand through his hair. He took the glass, Kaelen muttered. He took the damn glass. Why? I asked. DNA, Kaelen said. He looked at me. He thinks you aren't who you say you are. Or he thinks you are sick. I don't know. But Nico doesn't do anything without a reason. He looked worried. I hated that I was the cause of it. I wanted to smooth the lines between his brows. I am just Elara, I said, just the collateral. Are you? He asked. He looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Because you don't act like a Vance. You don't look like a Vance. And today you looked like something else entirely. What? I asked. He walked back to me. He pulled me up to stand. He kept his hands on my waist. His thumbs dug into my hips through the silk of the dress. The heat of his palms branded me. Important, he said. He leaned in. His face was inches from mine. I could feel his breath on my lips. I wanted him to close the gap. I wanted him to kiss me and make me forget about Nikolai and Julian and the cage I was in. The air between us crackled. It was magnetic. It was inevitable. But he didn't kiss me. He pulled back, his jaw tight. Go change, he said. His voice was strained. Put on the jeans, I hate this dress. Why? I asked. Hurt. Because, he growled, turning away from me. It makes me want to do things that will get us both killed. He walked to the window and stared out at the city. I stood there for a moment, my skin tingling where he had touched me. I went to my room. I took off the expensive dress. I put on my paint-stained jeans and my oversized sweater. But as I looked in the mirror, I touched my lips. Kaelen Thorne wanted me. The Reaper wanted the hostage. And for the first time in my life, the tremor in my hand wasn't from fear. It was from anticipation. Whatever Nikolai Kovac was planning, whatever game my father was playing, it didn't matter. Because inside this concrete fortress, something else was happening. Something dangerous. Something real. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be rescued anymore.
Chapter 5. Kaelen glass shouldn't sound like that when it breaks. It shouldn't sound like a scream. I was in the living room staring at the tablet Echo had left on the coffee table. The security feed was a grid of silent gray corridors. It was 0300 hours, the witching hour, the time when the city held its breath before the dawn killed the night. Then the south window exploded. It wasn't a rock. It was a high-caliber round. The reinforced glass spider-webbed and then showered inward like diamond rain. I was moving before the shards hit the floor. My gun was in my hand. I flipped the table for cover, but I didn't stay behind it. Staying put was how you died. Echo was already moving. I heard her door slam open down the hall. "Secure the package," I roared. More shots. They were pinging off the concrete pillars. They weren't trying to hit anything specific. They were spraying and praying. This wasn't a hit squad. This was a wake-up call. It was sloppy. It was loud. It was Julian Vance. I sprinted to Elara's room. I didn't knock. I kicked the door open. She was already sitting up in bed, clutching the sheet to her chest. Her eyes were wide, black holes in the pale moonlight. "Get up!" I barked. She didn't freeze. She didn't scream. She threw the covers off and scrambled out of bed. She was wearing a t-shirt that hung to her knees. "Shoes," I ordered. "We are leaving." She shoved her feet into her combat boots. She didn't bother with laces. I grabbed her arm. I dragged her into the hallway. The air smelled of pulverized drywall and cold city wind. Echo appeared from the gloom. She was wearing tactical gear over her pajamas and holding a submachine gun like it was a teddy bear. "Sniper on the north roof opposite us," Echo said calmly. "2 vehicles at the main gate. They are trying to flush us out." "Let them try," I said. "We take the service elevator to the sub-basement. The car is prepped. We ran. I kept Elara between me and the wall. I shielded her body with mine. Every time a bullet whined past the broken windows, I felt a spike of adrenaline that had nothing to do with my own life. If she got scratched, I was going to burn the city down. We hit the elevator. I punched the code. The doors slid shut just as a round took a chunk out of the wall where my head had been a second ago. Elara was shaking. I could feel the tremors vibrating through her arm where I held her. "Are they coming in?" she asked. Her voice was thin. "No," I said. "This is theater. Your father wants us to run. He wants to see where we go." "Then why are we running?" she asked. "Because the spire is compromised," I said grimly, "and I don't gamble with my collateral." The elevator hit the bottom. We moved to the secure garage. My SUV was waiting. It was armored, bulletproof glass, run-flat tires, a tank disguised as a luxury vehicle. Echo took the back seat. I threw Elara into the passenger side and buckled her in myself. My hands were steady, but my blood was boiling. I got in and fired the engine. The V8 roared. "Hold on," I said. I didn't wait for the gate to open fully. I scraped the paint off the side of the car as I gunned it out of the garage. We hit the street doing 60. 2 black sedans pulled out to follow us. "Echo," I said. "On it," she replied. She rolled down the rear window. The wind howled into the cabin. The sound of automatic fire erupted from the back seat. It was deafening in the enclosed space. Behind us, tires squealed, metal crunched. One of the sedans swerved and slammed into a parked bus. "One down," Echo yelled over the wind. She sounded happy. That woman was a psychopath. I took a sharp left, heading for the highway. I drove like a man possessed. I wove through traffic, ran red lights, and pushed the engine to its limit. We lost the second tail 3 miles out of the city limits. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold, hard focus. I checked the rearview mirror. Echo was reloading her magazine. I checked the passenger seat. Elara was staring out the window. Her hands were clenched in her lap. She wasn't crying. She looked angry. "Where are we going?" she asked. "North," I said. "The mountains. I have a place. It isn't on the books. Julian doesn't know about it. Nikolai doesn't even know the exact coordinates." We drove for 3 hours. The city lights faded into the rearview mirror, replaced by the crushing dark of the forest. The rain turned to sleet and then to snow. The roads got narrower, winding. I watched Elara out of the corner of my eye. She hadn't spoken since we left the city. She was shivering. I turned up the heat. "You okay?" I asked. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "My father just shot up your apartment building to make a point," she said. "I am in a car with 2 professional killers heading into the wilderness. I am fantastic." She had a mouth on her. I liked it. "He missed," I said. "He wasn't trying to hit us," she said. She turned to look at me. "He was hurting us. Like cattle." "Maybe," I said. "But now we are off the map. He can't herd what he can't find." We reached the cabin just as the sun was starting to bleed gray light over the peaks. It wasn't a log cabin. It was a glass box jutting out of the side of the mountain. It was modern, sharp, and severe. It looked like a piece of ice that had fallen from the sky and stuck in the rock. I parked the car in the hidden garage beneath the structure. "We are here," I said. We got out. The air was biting cold. It smelled of pine needles and snow. Elara wrapped her arms around herself. Her bare legs were turning blue in the cold. "Inside," I ordered. We went up the stairs into the main living area. It was one massive room with glass walls on 3 sides. The view was breathtaking. Snow-covered trees, jagged peaks, and endless white silence. Echo whistled. Nice digs, Reaper. Who is your decorator, Satan? Minimalist, I grunted. There is no furniture, Echo pointed out. Just a couch and a fireplace. Less to dust, I said. Went to the fireplace and started a fire. The gas jets hissed and orange flames licked up the faux logs. Heat began to radiate into the room. Echo wandered off to check the perimeter. She was restless. The quiet made her twitchy. Elara stood by the window looking out at the snow. She looked lost. She looked like a ghost haunting my glass house. Come to the fire, I said. She turned. She walked over and stood in front of the flames. The orange light danced on her pale skin. She held her hands out to the warmth. I watched her. I couldn't look away. In the city, she was a problem to be solved. Here in the isolation, she was something else. A woman. A beautiful, broken woman who was currently shivering in my living room. I went to the closet and pulled out a heavy wool blanket. I walked up behind her and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched, then relaxed. She pulled the blanket tight around herself. Thank you, she whispered. I stayed behind her. Close. Too close. I could smell the vanilla scent of her hair under the smell of smoke and fear. I saw you in the car, I said. You didn't panic. She looked at the fire. Panicking takes energy. I don't have energy to waste. You are tough, I said. Tougher than you look. She gave a small shrug. I am numb, Kaelen. There is a difference. I didn't like that answer. Numbness was a defense mechanism. It worked until it didn't. Then you shattered. I reached out and turned her to face me. My hands rested on her shoulders over the rough wool of the blanket. Look at me, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were dark pools. You are safe here, I told her. Nobody knows this place exists. Not Julian. Not the syndicate. Just me. Why do you have a place like this? She asked. Because sometimes I need to not be the Reaper, I said honestly. We stood there. The silence of the mountain pressed against the glass. The fire crackled. The tension that had been simmering between us since the first day began to boil. It wasn't fear anymore. It was awareness. I looked at her mouth. Her lips were parted slightly. They looked soft. I stepped back. I had to step back. She was the job. She was the boss's property, essentially. I'm going to get wood, I said. My voice was tight. I turned and walked away before I did something stupid. 2 days passed in a blur of white snow and gray skies. A blizzard had rolled in, trapping us on the mountain. Echo was bored out of her mind. She spent her time stripping and cleaning her weapons on the kitchen island. Elara was quiet. She sketched in the book I gave her. She sat by the window for hours watching the snow fall. I was going crazy. Being locked in a glass box with Elara Vance was torture. I watched her move. I watched her eat. I watched the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Every small movement felt like a provocation. I needed to burn off the energy. Elara, I said. She looked up from her book. Come here, I said. She set the book down and walked over to where I stood in the center of the room. What is it? She asked. You need to learn how to defend yourself, I said. If Julian sends men here, Echo and I will be busy. I can't be looking over my shoulder to make sure you aren't dying. She blinked. You want to teach me to fight? I want to teach you to survive, I said. I pulled a knife from my belt. It was a tactical blade, matte black, serrated edge. It looked mean. Take it, I said. She hesitated, then reached out and took the handle. She held it like it was a dead fish, limp, awkward. No, I said, like this. I moved behind her. I wrapped my hand around hers, adjusting her grip. "Thumb here," I instructed. "Firm grip. It is an extension of your arm, not a tool." My chest was pressed against her back. I could feel the heat of her body seeping into mine. She was small against me, soft where I was hard. Her breath hitched. "Relax," I murmured near her ear. "You are tense. If you are tense, you are slow. If you are slow, you are dead. It is hard to relax when you are holding a knife," she said. Her voice was breathless. I chuckled. It was a dark sound. "The knife is your friend, Elara. The world is the enemy." I guided her arm through a slashing motion. "Go for the soft spots," I said. "Throat, belly, inner thigh. You don't need strength. You need precision. You need to be vicious." "I don't think I have vicious in me," she whispered. "You do," I said. "I saw it in your eyes when you looked at your father. Hate is a fuel. Use it." I moved her arm again. The motion brought her body flush against mine. Her hips rocked back against me. A jolt of lust hit me so hard I almost dropped my own guard. It was visceral, animal. I should have let go. The lesson was over. She knew how to hold the knife. I didn't let go. I slid my free hand around her waist. I pulled her tighter against me. "Kaelen," she breathed. It wasn't a protest. It was a question. I took the knife from her hand and tossed it onto the sofa. I spun her around. The window was behind her. The snow was swirling outside, a white vortex of chaos. Inside, the fire was dying, casting long shadows. I boxed her in against the glass. I put my hands on the window on either side of her head. "What are we doing?" she asked. Her eyes were wide. She was trembling, but not from fear. I knew fear. This was desire. I looked down at her. She was the daughter of my enemy. She was a liability. She was everything I shouldn't want. But I was a man who took what he wanted. "I am teaching you how to survive," I rasped. That was a lie. This wasn't survival. This was ruin. I lowered my head. She tilted hers back. She didn't look away. She didn't push me back. I kissed her. I didn't start gentle. I didn't ask for permission. I crashed my mouth onto hers like a starving man finding a feast. She tasted like vanilla and shock. For a second, she froze. Then she made a small sound in her throat and opened to me. I groaned. I slid my hand into her hair, gripping the back of her head, angling her for deeper access. My tongue swept into her mouth, claiming her, tasting her. She wrapped her arms around my neck. She pulled me closer. She kissed me back with a desperation that matched my own. It was messy. It was hot. It was wrong. I pressed my hips into hers. She gasped against my mouth as she felt the hard ridge of my desire. I wanted to take her right here, up against the glass with the storm watching. I wanted to strip her out of those jeans and mark her. "Kaelen," she moaned. The sound of my name on her lips shattered my control. I bit her lower lip, tugging it. "You drive me crazy," I growled against her mouth. "You know that." She panted, her forehead resting against my chest. "I'm not trying to," she whispered. "That's the problem," I said. I kissed her again. Hard, fast, a promise of what was coming. Then I pulled back. I had to. If I didn't stop now, I wouldn't stop at all. And Echo was in the next room cleaning a sniper rifle. I stepped away. My chest was heaving. Elara leaned back against the glass. Her lips were swollen and red. Her eyes were dazed. She looked thoroughly kissed. I ran a hand over my face. "Keep the knife," I said. My voice was wrecked. I turned and walked toward the door. I needed cold air. I needed to stand in the snow until my blood stopped boiling. "Where are you going?" she asked. To check the perimeter, I lied. I walked out onto the deck. The wind hit me like a slap. The cold bit into my skin. It didn't help. I could still taste her. I leaned against the railing and looked out at the white nothingness. Julian Vance had started a war. But standing there in the cold, I realized he had done something much worse. He had given me something to lose.
Chapter 6. Elara. The kiss tasted like blood and ash. It lingered on my lips long after Kaelen had walked out the door and into the snow. I stood by the glass wall and watched him leaning against the railing of the deck. He was smoking a cigarette. The cherry glowed red in the twilight. He looked like a statue carved out of night and resentment. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might crack my ribs. He had kissed me. Kaelen Thorne, the Reaper. He had pushed me up against the glass and devoured me, and I had let him. I had wanted it. God help me, I had wanted it more than I wanted my next breath. I touched my mouth. It felt swollen, sensitive. Behind me, the kitchen clattered. Echo was making noise on purpose. She was letting me know she was there. She was giving me time to put my mask back on. I turned around. Echo was sitting on the counter eating an apple with a knife. She sliced a piece off and popped it into her mouth. "You look like you just saw a ghost," Echo said. "Or maybe you just kissed one." I didn't answer. I walked to the fireplace and held my hands out to the flames. I was cold, but it wasn't the weather. It was the shock. "He is dangerous," Echo said. She wasn't joking this time. Her voice was serious. "Kaelen isn't a boyfriend material kind of guy, Elara. He is a weapon. You don't cuddle with a loaded gun." "I know," I whispered. "Do you?" she asked. She jumped off the counter. "Because from where I was standing it looked like you were trying to pull the trigger." I didn't have a defense. She was right. I was playing a game I didn't know the rules to. A sound cut through the quiet crackle of the fire. It started as a low, thrumming vibration in the floorboards. Then it grew into a roar that shook the glass walls. I looked out the window. Kaelen had thrown his cigarette down and was stomping it out. He had his gun in his hand. He was looking up at the sky. "What is that?" I asked. Echo was already moving. She grabbed her rifle from the sofa. "Chopper," she said. "Low approach." "Is it my father?" I asked. Panic clawed at my throat. "No," Echo said. She checked the scope. "It is a civilian bird. Expensive. It is ours." Kaelen burst through the door. A gust of freezing air followed him in. "Get back," he ordered, away from the glass. "Who is it?" I asked. "Nikolai," he said. He didn't look happy. He looked terrified. I had never seen Kaelen Thorne look terrified. He looked at me and his eyes were dark and wild. "Why is he here?" I asked. He didn't answer. He holstered his gun but kept his hand on it. The helicopter crested the ridge. It was black and sleek. The downdraft kicked up a blinding cloud of snow. It hovered for a moment, then settled onto the flat rock pad 50 yards from the cabin. The rotors began to slow. The door opened. Nikolai jumped out. He wasn't wearing a coat. He was in a suit and the wind was whipping his tie around his neck. He looked frantic. He ducked under the blades and ran toward the cabin. He was holding a manila folder in his hand like a weapon. Kaelen opened the door. Nikolai stumbled inside. He was shivering violently. His face was pale, almost gray. He looked like a man who had just watched his own funeral. He didn't say hello. He didn't look at Kaelen or Echo. He looked at me. "Where is she?" he demanded, even though I was standing right in front of him. I stepped back. The intensity in his gaze was physical. It felt like a blow. "I am here," I said. He walked toward me. Kaelen stepped in his path. It was a reflex. Nikolai shoved Kaelen aside. It wasn't a playful shove. It was a strike. "Move!" Nikolai snarled. Kaelen stumbled back, surprised. He looked at his boss and then at me. He didn't move to stop him again. Nikolai stopped 3 feet from me. He was breathing hard. He looked at my face. He looked at my hands. The tremor started. My left hand began to shake against my leg. I tried to hide it. "Don't," Nikolai said. His voice broke. "Don't hide it." He threw the folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a slap that made us all jump. "Read it," he said. I looked at the folder. I looked at him. "What is it?" I asked. "The truth," he said. I looked at Kaelen. He gave a small, sharp nod. I walked to the table. My hand shook so bad I could barely lift the cover. It was a medical report. DNA analysis. There were charts and numbers that made no sense to me. Strings of genetic markers, probability percentages. At the bottom, there was a summary. Subject A, Elara Vance. Subject B, Nikolai Kovac. Relationship probability, 99.9%. Sibling match, positive. The world tilted. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I read it again. And again. "I don't understand," I whispered. "It was 22 years ago," Nikolai said. His voice was hollow. He was staring at the fire now. He couldn't look at me. "What was?" I asked. "My mother went into labor early," he said. "It was a private clinic. Expensive, discreet. The Vance family was using the same clinic. Julian's wife was giving birth in the next room." I stood frozen. I knew this story. Or I thought I did. I knew my mother died in childbirth. Julian had told me that my birth was the reason she was dead. It was the first sin I ever committed. Being born. Julian's child was stillborn, Nikolai said. It was a girl. He turned to look at me. His eyes were wet. "My sister was born healthy," he said. "She cried. The nurse took her to the nursery. When my mother asked for her baby an hour later, the nurse said there had been a complication. She said the baby died." He took a step toward me. "They lied," he said. My breath hitched. "No." "Julian paid the nurse," Nikolai said. "He paid her $500,000 to swap the babies. He took the healthy Kovac girl. He left us with the dead Vance child." He pointed at me. His finger was shaking. "He didn't just steal a baby, Elara. He stole you. He knew who you were. He knew you were my sister. He knew you were a Kovac. And he took you home and raised you as a Vance. He raised you in misery. He treated you like trash because every time he looked at you, he saw his enemy." I shook my head. Denial was a reflex. It was a shield. "That is impossible," I said. "Julian is my father. He hates me, but he is my father." "Look at the tremor," Nikolai shouted. He grabbed his own hand and held it up. It was shaking. The same rhythm. The same roll. 1-2. 1-2. "It is genetic," he said. "It is called essential tremor. My father had it. I have it. You have it. It is the Kovac mark." I looked at my hand, then at his. It was identical. The room spun. I sat down heavily on the sofa, because my legs refused to hold me up anymore. "He kept me," I whispered. "Why would he keep me if he hated you?" "Because he is a monster," Kaelen said from the corner. His voice was low and dark. We all looked at him. Kaelen was standing in the shadows. He looked sick. "It was the long game," Kaelen said. "He raised the enemy's bloodline as a slave. He wanted to break you. He wanted to hand you over to us as a hostage and watch us treat our own blood like garbage. It was his private joke." Kaelen looked at me. His eyes were full of horror. "I treated you like a prisoner," he said. "I threatened you, I almost—" He stopped. He looked at my lips. The lips he had just kissed. Nikolai didn't notice the look. He was too focused on me. "You are not Elara Vance," Nikolai said. He knelt in front of me. He took my shaking hands in his. His skin was warm. "You are Elara Kovac. You are my sister." He squeezed my hands. "I have been looking for the nurse for 20 years, he said. "I never believed it. My mother insisted the baby cried. She insisted she heard her. Everyone called her crazy. She died thinking she was insane. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. You have her eyes, he whispered. I looked at this man. This king of the underworld, this killer. He was crying over me. Julian never cried. Julian never held my hand. Julian looked at me like I was a stain on his carpet. I thought about the coldness of the estate, the hunger, the loneliness, the way I felt like I didn't belong in my own skin. I looked at Echo. She was standing by the kitchen. She had lowered her rifle. She looked stunned. Well, Echo said softly. That explains the aim. Vances can't shoot for shit. It was a joke, a weak one, but it broke the tension just enough for me to breathe. I pulled my hands away from Nikolai, not because I was afraid, but because it was too much. It was too fast. So I am not a hostage, I said. No, Nikolai said fiercely. You are family. You are royalty in this city. You own half of everything I have. He stood up and turned to Kaelen. Pack everything, Nikolai ordered. We are leaving. We are taking her to the compound. If Julian Vance wants a war, he is going to get an apocalypse. I will burn his entire legacy to the ground for this. Kaelen nodded. He moved to the bedroom to get the bags. He walked past me. He didn't. Look at me. He gave me a wide berth. He acted like I was radioactive. Kaelen, I said. He stopped. He didn't turn around. I am still me, I said. No, he said. His voice was cold. Colder than the snow outside. You aren't. He looked over his shoulder. His face was a mask of stone. The heat from earlier was gone. The desire was gone, replaced by a wall of duty. You are the boss's sister, he said. You are a Kovac. So what? I asked. So you are off limits, he said. He walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. The sound echoed in the glass house. I looked at Nikolai. He was on his phone barking orders in Russian. He was mobilizing an army. He was planning a slaughter. I sat there on the sofa feeling the phantom limb of my old life falling away. Elara Vance was dead. She died in this room with a DNA test. But I didn't know who Elara Kovac was yet. I looked at the closed bedroom door. I knew one thing. Elara Kovac was in love with the Reaper, and he had just decided that I was untouchable. I looked down at my hands. The tremor was still there. 1-2. 1-2. It wasn't a defect anymore. It was a birthright. Echo walked over and sat on the arm of the sofa. She bumped my shoulder with hers. Hey, she said quietly. Hey, I whispered. Look on the bright side, she said. At least you got an upgrade in the brother department. Julian's other kids were assholes. I let out a wet laugh. It hurt my chest. I stood up. I walked to the window. The snow was still falling, covering the world in white. Cleaning it. I wasn't a pawn anymore. I was the queen. But standing there watching the reflection of Kaelen packing my bag in the glass, I felt more like a tragedy waiting to happen. We were safe from Julian now. But I had a feeling the real danger was just beginning inside this house. Because now I had power. And power ruined everything.
Chapter 7. Kaelen. I packed the bag with the efficiency of a machine. My hands moved on autopilot. Fold the tactical vest, secure the ammunition, check the med kit, zip the bag. It was a distraction. If I stopped moving, I was going to put my fist through the wall. Nikolai was pacing the length of the living room. He was speaking rapid-fire Russian into a satellite phone ordering a war. He wanted tanks. He wanted air support. He wanted to level the entire Vance estate and salt the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. I didn't blame him. If I found out Julian Vance had stolen my sister and tortured her for 20 years, I would want to burn the world down too. But I wasn't thinking about the war. I was thinking about the taste of her mouth. I had kissed her. I had pressed her up against the glass and claimed her. I had thought about taking her right there on the floor. And she was a Kovac. She was the Pakan's sister. She was royalty, and I was the hired help. I was the dog they kept around to bite people. I zipped the duffel bag shut with a vicious yank. "We can't leave tonight," I said. Nikolai stopped pacing. He lowered the phone. "What?" "The storm," I said. I pointed to the window. It was a whiteout. Visibility is 0. If we try to fly that bird out of here now, we will smash into the side of the mountain. We are grounded until morning. Nikolai cursed. He stared out into the white abyss. "Fine," he snapped. "We secure the perimeter. We leave at first light." He looked at the bedroom door. It was closed. Elara was in there. Or Elara Kovac. I had to stop thinking of her as Vance. "Is she okay?" Nikolai asked. His voice lost its edge. He sounded lost. "She is in shock," I said. "You dropped a bomb on her, Nico. Give her a minute to put herself back together." He nodded. He sat down heavily on the sofa. He put his head in his hands. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear to God, Kaelen, I didn't know." "I know," I said. I grabbed my coat. I needed to get out of this room. I needed air that didn't smell like expensive cologne and family drama. "I'm going to check the generator," I said. I walked out the back door. The cold hit me like a hammer. It was good. It numbed the heat in my blood. I walked around the side of the cabin. I checked the propane tanks. I checked the backup generator. Everything was fine. There was nothing to fix. I stood there in the snow, letting the flakes melt on my face. I had to resign. It was the only way. I couldn't be her bodyguard anymore. I couldn't be near her. Every time I looked at her, I didn't see the boss's sister. I saw the woman who made me soup. I saw the woman who learned how to pick a lock in 5 minutes. I saw the woman who looked at me like I was a hero instead of a monster. If I stayed, I would cross a line. I had already crossed it. The next time, I wouldn't come back. I went back inside. I shook the snow off my coat. Echo was in the kitchen making tea. She looked at me. She knew, she always knew. "You look like you are about to run," she said quietly. "I am not running," I growled. "I am being professional." She snorted. "That is what you call it." "Okay." The bedroom door opened. Elara walked out. She had changed. She was wearing leggings and one of my hoodies she must have stolen from my bag. It hung off her frame, reaching her mid-thigh. She looked small. But when she looked at me, she didn't look small. She looked fierce. Nikolai stood up immediately. "Elara, do you need anything? Food? Water?" She ignored him. She walked straight to me. "We need to talk," she said. "Not now," I said. I turned away. "I have to secure the windows." "No," she said. She reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You don't get to run away, Kaelen Thorne." Nikolai looked between us. He frowned. "What is going on?" "Nothing," I said. "Everything," Elara said. She pulled me toward the hallway. "Come with me." I shouldn't have gone. I should have stood my ground. I was the enforcer. I didn't take orders from anyone except Nikolai. But I went. She led me into the small guest room where I had been sleeping. She closed the door and locked it. "What are you doing?" I asked. She turned to face me. The room was dark, lit only by the snow-reflected moonlight coming through the window. "You are pulling away," she said. "Why?" "Because you are a Kovac," I said bluntly. "You are the sister of the man who signs my paychecks. You are off limits." She laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. 2 hours ago, you had your tongue in my mouth. Did I become royalty in the last 60 minutes? "Yes," I said. "You did. The rules have changed, Elara." Screw the rules, she said. She stepped closer. She invaded my space. She smelled like soap and vanilla and my own detergent from the hoodie. I don't care about the name, she said. I don't care about Nikolai or the syndicate or any of it. For 22 years, I was nobody. I was a ghost. She reached out and put her hands on my chest. I could feel the heat of her palms through my shirt. You are the first person who saw me, she whispered. Not the hostage, not the sister. Me. You saw me, Kaelen. I grabbed her wrists. I meant to push her away. Instead, I found myself holding on to her like she was an anchor. Elara, don't, I rasped. You don't know what you are asking for. I am a killer. I am a weapon. Nikolai will find you a prince. He will find you someone clean. I don't want clean, she said fiercely. I want you. She stood on her tiptoes. She pressed her lips to my jaw. I felt my resolve cracking. It was like ice on a lake fracturing under weight. He will kill me, I said. If I touch you again, he will kill me. Let him try, she murmured against my skin. She moved her hands up to my neck. She threaded her fingers into my hair. She pulled my head down. Kiss me, she demanded. I couldn't say no. I was strong enough to break bones and take bullets, but I wasn't strong enough to deny her this. I crashed my mouth onto hers. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It was the kiss of a man who knew he was walking toward the gallows and didn't care. I lifted her up. She wrapped her legs around my waist. I carried her to the bed and fell with her. The mattress groaned under our weight. I settled between her thighs, my body covering hers, shielding her from the world. Are you sure? I asked. My voice was a broken growl. Once I start, I can't stop. You become mine, Elara, not a Kovac, mine. Yours, she breathed. I am yours. I didn't waste time. I stripped the hoodie off her. I tore my own shirt open, buttons flying across the room. Skin met skin, fire met gasoline. I kissed her everywhere. I tasted the pulse in her throat. I worshipped the curve of her breast. I ran my hands over every inch of her, memorizing her, mapping her like she was new territory. She wasn't passive. She clawed at my back. She bit my shoulder. She met my intensity with her own. She was starving for touch, for connection, and I fed her. When I finally entered her, she cried out, not in pain, but in relief. I held myself still, letting her adjust to me. I looked down at her. Her hair was spread out on the pillow, a dark halo. Her eyes were blown wide violet in the darkness. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I love you, I thought. I didn't say it. I couldn't say it. Words were dangerous. Actions were truth. I moved. I drove into her, establishing a rhythm that was primal and deep. She arched up to meet me. We moved together in the dark, silent cabin while the storm raged outside. It wasn't just sex. It was a claiming. It was a vow made in sweat and friction. When she came, she screamed my name. It was the only sound in the world that mattered. I followed her over the edge, pouring everything I had into her, emptying my soul into her body. We collapsed together, tangled in the sheets, breathing hard. I rolled to the side, pulling her with me. I tucked her head under my chin. I pulled the duvet up over us. I held her while her breathing slowed. I stroked her hair. We are in trouble, she whispered against my chest. Yeah, I said. Big trouble. Nikolai is going to be angry. He will get over it, I said. Or he won't. I don't care. She lifted her head to look at me. You don't? No, I said. I kissed her forehead. I quit. What? She asked, sitting up. I resign, I said. I can't work for him and be with you. It's a conflict of interest, so I quit. I will take you somewhere safe. We will disappear. No, she said firmly. She pushed me back down. She lay on top of me, her chin on my chest. You are not quitting, she said. You are the best enforcer he has. He needs you, and I need you. You can't have it both ways, Elara. Watch me, she said. I am a Kovac, right? That means I get what I want. I laughed. It was a genuine sound. She was learning fast. The door handle rattled. We both froze. Kaelen, Nikolai's voice came through the door. It was calm. Too calm. Open the door. I looked at Elara. She looked at me. Stay here, I said. I got up. I pulled on my pants. I didn't bother with a shirt. I walked to the door and unlocked it. Nikolai stood there. He looked impeccable even in the middle of the night. He looked past me at the bed, at Elara huddled under the sheets, her bare shoulders visible. He looked back at me. His face was unreadable. I should kill you, Nikolai said conversationally. You can try, I said. He sighed. He rubbed his temples. Is she safe? He asked. With me? Yes. Always. Nikolai nodded slowly. He looked at his sister again. She chose you, he said. Yes. Then you are not just my employee anymore, Nikolai said. You are family. Which makes this complicated. I expected him to yell. I expected him to fire me. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a cigar case. Don't break her heart, Nikolai said. Because if you do, I won't just kill you, Kaelen. I will peel you apart. He turned and walked away. I closed the door. I locked it again. I leaned my forehead against the wood and let out a long breath. I turned back to the bed. Elara was watching me. He didn't fire you, she said. No, I said. He promoted me. I walked back to the bed. I crawled in beside her. Go to sleep, I said. We leave at dawn. She snuggled into me. Her hand rested over my heart. My hand still has the tremor, she whispered. Even after that. I took her hand. I kissed her knuckles. It's part of you, I said. I love every part. She went still. You love me? She asked. I closed my eyes. I was exhausted. I was terrified. And I was happier than I had been in 10 years. Go to sleep, Elara. She didn't push. She just squeezed my hand. I lay there in the dark, listening to the wind howl. The storm was breaking. Tomorrow we would go back to the city, back to the war. But tonight I had everything I needed right here in this bed. I was Kaelen Thorne, the Reaper, and I had just stolen the king's sister, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Chapter 8. Elara happiness was a strange sensation. It felt heavy. It sat in my chest like a warm stone anchoring me to the earth when all I had ever known was floating in the void. I woke up tangled in sheets and Kaelen. His arm was heavy over my waist, his face buried in the crook of my neck. He was asleep. For a man called the Reaper, he slept deeply, his breathing slow and even against my skin. I traced the ink on his bicep with my fingertip. Skulls and roses. Death and beauty. It suited him. The storm outside had not let up. If anything, it had gotten worse. The wind was howling against the glass walls of the cabin, turning the world outside into a white blur. We were trapped. And for the first time in my life, I didn't mind being in a cage because I was in it with him. I carefully slid out from under his arm. He grumbled something in his sleep and reached for me, but I pressed a kiss to his forehead and slipped away. I needed water. I pulled on his hoodie again. It smelled like him. It smelled like safety. I walked out into the main living area. The fire had burned down to embers. The room was chilly. Nikolai was asleep on the sofa, one arm thrown over his eyes. He looked less like a king and more like an exhausted man. My brother. The thought still sent a shockwave through me. I had a brother. A real one. not the vipers Julian had raised me with. Echo was in the kitchen. She wasn't sleeping. She was sitting on a stool staring at her satellite phone. Her face was pale in the gray morning light. She was chewing on her thumbnail, tearing the skin. "Morning," I whispered so I wouldn't wake Nikolai. Echo jumped. She nearly dropped the phone. She shoved it into her pocket with a speed that made me blink. "Jesus, Elara, put a bell on. You move like a ninja." "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "Storm keeps waking me up. I hate the wind. Sounds like people screaming." She looked terrible. Her eyes were bloodshot and there was a tremor in her hands that reminded me of my own. "Are you okay?" I asked. I walked over to her. "You look sick." "I'm fine," she snapped. Then she softened. "Sorry, just cabin fever. I need to get back to the city. I need noise." This silence is too loud. I understood that. Silence gave you too much time to think. I started to make coffee, but the machine didn't whir to life. The lights on the panel were dead. "Power is out," Echo said. "Lines must be down from the ice. We are running on the backup generator now, but it only powers the essentials. Heat and security. No coffee machine." I sighed. "Great." "I can make hot chocolate," Echo said. "Old school, on the gas stove." I found a stash of powder and some condensed milk in the pantry. "It will be a sugar bomb, but it will wake us up." "That sounds amazing," I said. I sat at the island while she busied herself with a pot and a spoon. She was moving jerkily. Too fast. She kept glancing at the window, then at the hallway where Kaelen was sleeping, then back to the pot. "Is the perimeter secure?" I asked. She froze for a second, then kept stirring. "Yeah, tight as a drum. Nobody is getting in here without us knowing." The bedroom door opened. Kaelen walked out. He was shirtless, wearing only his tactical pants. He looked glorious and terrifying. He walked straight to me and kissed the top of my head. He didn't care that Echo was there. He didn't care that Nikolai was waking up on the couch. He claimed me. "Morning," he rumbled. "Morning," I smiled. "Power is out," Echo announced. She didn't look at him. She was focused on pouring the thick, dark liquid into mugs. "I made cocoa. It is the only fuel we have until the storm breaks." She slid a mug across the granite counter toward Kaelen. "Drink up, big guy. You need the calories." Kaelen picked up the mug. He took a sip and grimaced. "Sweet," he said. "It is chocolate," Echo said. "It is supposed to be sweet. Stop complaining and drink it. It will warm you up." I made one for Nico, too. She carried a mug over to the sofa, where Nikolai was sitting up rubbing his face. "Thanks," Nikolai muttered, taking the cup. Echo came back and handed me mine. Her fingers brushed against mine. Her skin was ice cold. She was sweating. "Are you sure you are okay?" I asked her again. "Drink your cocoa, Elara," she said. Her voice was tight. We stood in the kitchen sipping the hot, sweet drink. Outside, the wind battered the glass. It felt like we were the last 4 people on Earth. Kaelen finished his drink in 3 large gulps. He set the mug down. "I am going to check the generator," he said. "If the main lines are down, we need to make sure the fuel levels are stable." "I will go," Nikolai said, standing up. He stretched. "I need the air. My head is pounding." "No," Kaelen said. "I got it. You stay with her." Nikolai nodded and sat back down. Kaelen turned to grab his coat. He took 1 step and stumbled. It was subtle at first. He just misplaced his foot. He caught himself on the counter. He shook his head like he was trying to clear water from his ears. "Kaelen?" I asked. He blinked. His eyelids looked heavy. "I'm fine," he slurred. "Just dizzy." He took another step and this time his knees buckled. He hit the floor hard. 1 knee, then his shoulder. He tried to push himself up, but his arms wouldn't cooperate. "Kaelen!" I dropped my mug. It shattered on the floor, sending hot chocolate everywhere. I fell to my knees beside him. "What is wrong?" I cried. "Nikolai, help him!" Nikolai tried to stand, but he slumped back onto the sofa. He looked confused. He looked at his hands, then at the empty mug on the table. "What? Did you—" He couldn't finish the sentence. His eyes rolled back, and he slid sideways onto the cushions unconscious. Panic exploded in my chest. It was a cold, sharp knife. Kaelen was fighting. He was the Reaper. He didn't just go down. He was trying to crawl. He was trying to reach for the gun on the counter. But his movements were slow, like he was moving through molasses. "Echo!" I screamed. "Something is wrong. Help them!" Echo didn't move to help. She walked over to the security panel on the wall. She tapped the screen. "System disabled," the automated voice said. I froze. I looked at her. Echo was standing by the panel. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Kaelen, who was now lying flat on his back, his chest heaving, his eyes fighting to stay open. He was staring at her. There was no anger in his eyes yet, only confusion and betrayal. "Echo," Kaelen rasped. "Why?" Echo turned. Tears were streaming down her face. She was crying silently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She pulled her gun. She didn't point it at Kaelen. She pointed it at the floor. "They have my brother," she said. Her voice broke. "They sent me a video. They have him. They said if I didn't deliver her today, they would cut his throat." "No," I whispered. "No. Not you." Echo looked at me. The fun, sarcastic friend was gone. In her place was a desperate woman who had made a deal with the devil. "I have to, Elara. I don't have a choice." She walked over to me. "Get up," she said. I backed away. I scrambled backward on the floor until my back hit the cabinets. Kaelen let out a roar. It was a weak sound, but it was full of fury. He tried to grab Echo's ankle. His fingers brushed her boot, but he couldn't hold on. The drug was too strong. "Don't touch her," Kaelen snarled. His speech was slurring badly. "Echo, I will kill you. I will gut you." "I know," Echo said. She looked down at him. "I know you will. But not today." She grabbed my arm. She hauled me up. I tried to fight. I remembered the lessons. I tried to strike her throat. I tried to stomp on her foot. But Echo was a professional, and I was a painter who had taken 2 lessons. She twisted my arm behind my back and slammed me into the counter. "Stop fighting," she hissed in my ear. "Or I will have to knock you out, and I don't want to hurt you. Please, Elara, just walk." "No," I screamed. "Kaelen!" Kaelen was paralyzed. He was forced to watch. His eyes were burning with helpless rage. He was trapped in his own body. "I love you," I yelled at him. "I love you." Echo dragged me toward the door. She kicked it open. The cold hit us instantly. The wind screamed. Through the whiteout I saw shapes, black shapes moving against the snow. Snowmobiles. 4 of them. Men in white tactical gear were waiting. They had guns. They weren't Kovac men. They were Vance men. I recognized the insignia on their jackets. Echo shoved me forward. I stumbled into the snow. The cold bit through my leggings and the hoodie. I wasn't wearing boots. I was barefoot. One of the men stepped forward. He grabbed me. He had a bag in his hand. "Is he alive?" Echo screamed over the wind. "Is my brother alive?" The man laughed. His voice was muffled by his mask. "Load the girl," he ordered his men. They grabbed me. They threw a black hood over my head. The world went dark. I was lifted, thrown onto the back of a machine. "Wait!" Echo screamed. "You promised. You said you would let him go." "Loose ends," the man said. I heard a gunshot. But I didn't know who was shot. I didn't know if Echo was dead or if she had killed someone. The snowmobile engine roared to life beneath me. I was held down by strong hands. As we sped away into the blinding storm, I thought of Kaelen lying on the kitchen floor, unable to move, unable to save me. I thought of the cocoa, the sweetness that hid the poison. Echo had taught me how to pick locks. She had taught me how to find blind spots. But she had never taught me what to do when the person holding the key was your best friend. We raced down the mountain, leaving the glass cabin behind, leaving my heart behind. I was Elara Vance. I was the sister of a king and the lover of a reaper. But as the cold swallowed me whole, I realized I was still just a hostage. The cage had just changed owners again.
Chapter 9. Kaelen cold was the first thing I felt. It wasn't just the temperature of the room. It was a deep, marrow-freezing cold that sat in my chest and refused to move. I opened my eyes. The world was blurry. The ceiling beams were spinning slowly like the blades of a fan. My head throbbed with a dull, heavy rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I was on the floor. The stone tiles of the kitchen were biting into my back. I tried to sit up. My body didn't want to cooperate. My limbs felt like they were made of lead. The signals from my brain to my muscles were getting lost in the static of the drug. Elara. The name tore out of my throat. It sounded like a croak. I forced myself onto my elbows. The effort made me nauseous. I dry heaved, my stomach cramping violently, but there was nothing to bring up except bile and the lingering, sickly, sweet taste of chocolate. Echo. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Echo standing over me, Echo crying, Echo holding a gun. I roared. It was a weak sound, pathetic, but it was all I had. I dragged myself across the floor. My legs were useless, dragging behind me like dead weight. I used my arms to pull myself toward the counter. I needed to get up. I needed to move. Nikolai was on the sofa. He was slumped sideways, one arm hanging off the edge, his fingers brushing the rug. He wasn't moving. "Nico!" I yelled. He didn't stir. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the drug haze. If she killed him, if she killed the Pakan. I grabbed the edge of the granite island and hauled myself up. My knees buckled, but I locked them. I stood there swaying, breathing like a dying man. I stumbled toward the living room. I fell against the sofa. I grabbed Nikolai's shoulder and shook him hard. "Wake up," I snarled. "Wake up, you son of a bitch." Nikolai groaned. His eyelids fluttered. He winced as if the light hurt him physically. He tried to lift his head and failed. "What?" he mumbled. His speech was thick, slurred. "Echo," I said. "She drugged us. She took Elara." Nikolai's eyes snapped open. The confusion cleared, instantly replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. He tried to sit up. He managed it on the second try. He held his head in his hands. "Where?" he asked. "Gone," I said. I looked at the front door. It was wide open. Snow had drifted into the hallway, creating a white carpet that was slowly melting into puddles. The storm had broken. The wind had died down, leaving a silence so profound it felt heavy. I staggered to the door. I had to hold on to the frame to keep from falling. Outside, the world was white and blindingly bright. The sun was reflecting off the fresh snow. I looked at the ground. Tracks. Deep ruts from snowmobiles cut through the pristine surface. They headed down the mountain toward the east, toward the valley, toward the Vance territory. I walked out into the snow. I was barefoot. I was shirtless. The cold burned my skin, but I welcomed it. It sharpened my senses. It burned the last of the fog from my brain. I saw footprints, small ones, bare feet dragging through the powder. Elara. She had fought. I saw the scuff marks where she had dug her heels in. I saw the spot where she had fallen. I fell to my knees in the snow. I put my hand over the small impression of her foot. I had promised her. I had told her she was safe. I had told her I would protect her. And I had let the wolf in the front door. I screamed. It was a raw animal sound that ripped my throat raw. I punched the snow until my knuckles hit the frozen earth beneath. I didn't feel the pain. I wanted more pain. I wanted it to hurt as much as the hole in my chest where my heart used to be. Kaelen. I turned. Nikolai was standing in the doorway. He was leaning heavily against the jamb. His face was pale, but his eyes were hard. They were the eyes of a king who had just had his crown stolen. "Get inside," he ordered. "Freezing to death won't help her." I stood up. I swayed, but I didn't fall. I walked back inside. "We need weapons," I said. "We need a vehicle." Echo disabled the comms, Nikolai said. He was checking the satellite phone on the counter. It was smashed. She put a bullet through it. "She was thorough," I said bitterly. "She optimized the grid, remember? She knew exactly how to blind us." I walked to the kitchen island. I looked at the shattered mug on the floor. The spilled cocoa was drying, sticky and brown. It was then I saw it. Under the lip of the cabinet, half hidden by a stool, a phone. It wasn't one of ours. It was a cheap plastic burner. I bent down and picked it up. The screen was cracked, but it still had power. "Echo's phone," I said. "Check it," Nikolai said. I unlocked it. There was no passcode. There was only one message thread, one video file. I pressed play. The video was grainy, dark. It showed a young man tied to a chair. He was beaten bad. His face was a mask of bruises. A man in a ski mask was holding a knife to his throat. "We have him, Echo. You have 24 hours. Bring the girl or we cut his throat. No cops. No Kovac. Just you and the girl." The video ended. I stared at the black screen. "Her brother," I said. "She did it for her brother." Nikolai took the phone from me. He watched the video. His expression didn't change. He didn't show pity. He didn't show understanding. "He is dead," Nikolai said flatly. "What?" I asked. "Look at the timestamp," Nikolai said. He pointed to the corner of the screen. "This was filmed 3 weeks ago. Look at the blood on the floor. It's dry. They killed him, Kaelen. They killed him weeks ago, and they have been using an old video to pull her strings." I felt sick. Echo had betrayed us. She had handed Elara over to a monster, and she had done it for a corpse. "She didn't know," I said. "Ignorance is not an excuse for treason," Nikolai said. He crushed the phone in his hand. He threw the pieces into the fireplace. "She took my sister," he said. His voice was low. "Dangerous. She took Elara, and she handed her to Julian Vance. Do you know what he will do to her?" I knew. I knew exactly what Julian would do. He would break her. He would use her to send a message. He would hurt her just to see if she would bleed the same color as us. I walked to the bedroom. I grabbed my tactical gear. I pulled on my boots. I strapped my holster on. The weight of the gun felt good. It felt like an answer. I tossed a vest to Nikolai. "Put it on," I said. He caught it. "We are leaving. We are going to war," I said. I went to the hidden panel in the floor of the closet. I pulled it up. Inside was my emergency stash. Rifles, ammo, grenades, a satellite uplink that wasn't connected to the house system. I set it up on the floor. I typed in the emergency code. The signal connected. I dialed the main line for the syndicate. Slavik answered on the first ring. "Report," Slavik said. "We are compromised," I said. My voice was dead. Echo turned. "She took Elara. They are heading to the Vance estate." There was a silence on the line. Then a curse. "Is the Pakan alive?" Slavik asked. Nikolai took the headset from me. "I am alive," Nikolai said. "Listen to me, Slavik. I want everyone. I want every soldier, every enforcer, every cleaner we have on the payroll. Call the Italians, call the Irish, call everyone we have a treaty with, and tell them the truce is over." He paused. He looked at me. His eyes were burning with a cold blue fire. "Burn it down," Nikolai said. "Scorched earth. I want Julian Vance's head on a spike by sunset, and I want Echo found. If she is breathing, I want to be the one to stop it." He handed the headset back to me. "Get the car," he said. We went down to the garage. The SUV was still there. Echo hadn't taken it. She had taken the snowmobiles because they were faster on the mountain. I checked the engine. I checked the wheel wells for explosives. Paranoia was my new religion. It was clean. I got in the driver's seat. Nikolai got in the passenger side. I gripped the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. Not from the drug, from rage. I closed my eyes for a second. I saw Elara's face. I saw the way she looked at me when I kissed her. I heard her scream my name as she was dragged out the door. "I love you?" Those were the last words she said to me. I opened my eyes. "I'm going to kill them all," I said. "Good," Nikolai said. "Start driving." I hit the gas. The garage door opened and we shot out into the blinding white snow. The tires spun, then caught traction. We flew down the mountain road. I drove recklessly. I drove like a man who had nothing left to lose. Echo thought she was saving her brother. She thought she was making a trade. She was wrong. She had just started a fire that was going to consume the entire city, and I was going to be the match. I reached for the radio. I tuned it to the emergency frequency we used for the enforcers. "This is Reaper," I said into the mic. "All units. Red alert. Target is Julian Vance. Objective is recovery of Elara Vance." I paused. "Secondary objective," I said. "Find Echo." "Do we take her alive?" A voice crackled back. It was one of my lieutenants. I looked at the snow rushing past the window. I thought about the hot chocolate. I thought about the way she laughed with Elara. I thought about the betrayal in her eyes when she said she was sorry. "No," I said. I hung up the mic. The mountain blurred past us. We were descending into the valley, into the territory of the enemy. "Hold on, Elara," I whispered to the empty air. "I am coming, and God help anyone who stood in my way."
Chapter 10. Elara consciousness returned in jagged shards. First, there was the cold. It wasn't the clean, crisp bite of the snow in the mountains. It was a damp, stagnant chill that settled deep in my marrow. Then came the smell. Lemon polish, old paper, and the metallic tang of fear. It was a scent profile I had spent 20 years trying to scrub from my memory. I opened my eyes, but my brain refused to process what I was seeing. I wanted to be back in the glass cabin. I wanted to see the fire crackling in the hearth and Kaelen standing by the window, his silhouette blocking out the storm. But there was no fire. There was no Kaelen. I was back in the library of the Vance estate. The room was exactly as I remembered it from my childhood, a cavernous space lined with mahogany shelves filled with books that were never read. But the furniture had been rearranged. The heavy leather armchairs were pushed to the perimeter. The center of the room was cleared, transformed into a stage. I was the prop in the middle. I tried to move, and the reality of my situation slammed into me. I was bound to a high-backed wooden chair. Thick plastic zip ties dug into my wrists behind my back, cutting off the circulation. My ankles were lashed to the chair legs with leather straps. I was immobilized, displayed. "She is awake." The voice came from the shadows beyond the pool of harsh light that blinded me. It was a voice that used to make me freeze as a child, a Pavlovian response to danger. Julian Vance stepped into the light. He looked infuriatingly perfect. He was wearing a charcoal three-piece suit, the fabric shimmering under the industrial floodlights he had set up. He didn't look like a man who was losing a war against the Kovac syndicate. He looked like a man who was preparing for a gala. "Welcome home, Elara," he said, his tone conversational, as if I had just returned from a semester abroad rather than being kidnapped at gunpoint. He walked over to a table laden with electronics, laptops, a mixing board, and a complex array of cables that snaked across the expensive Persian rug like venomous black snakes. "Why?" I croaked. My throat felt like it had been scrubbed with steel wool. "Why bring me back?" Julian picked up a remote and adjusted the intensity of the lights pointed at me. I flinched as the brightness seared my retinas. "Because the game has changed," he said smoothly, "and because I missed you." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were dead things, shark-like and flat. He walked toward me, his shoes clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. He stopped inches away, invading my space, forcing me to smell his cologne, sandalwood and musk. It made bile rise in my throat. "You were a disappointment to me for 20 years, he murmured, reaching out to tilt my chin up. His fingers were icy. "A mute, sullen ghost in my house. But I always knew you had value. I just had to wait for the market to mature." I jerked my head away from his touch. "I'm not an asset. I'm a person." "You are leverage," he corrected, "and right now you are the most expensive object in the city." He began to pace, circling me like a predator inspecting a trap. "Do you know why I gave you to them?" he asked. "Do you know why I didn't just put a bullet in Nikolai's head and be done with it?" "Because you're a coward," I spat. He laughed, a dry, dusty sound. "No, because death is too simple. It's too quick. To truly destroy a man like Nikolai Kovac, or a beast like Kaelen Thorne, you have to break their spirit first." He stopped in front of me again, leaning down so his face was level with mine. "I knew who you were, Elara. I always knew. I stole you from that clinic 22 years ago, not just to hurt them then, but to hurt them now." He gestured to the room, to the camera setup. "I needed them to take you in. I needed them to confirm the DNA. I needed them to realize that the hostage was actually their own flesh and blood. And most importantly, I needed them to love you." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a sick, twisted master plan that spanned 2 decades. He had raised me in misery just to use me as a delayed blast bomb. "They are coming for me," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound brave. "Kaelen is coming, and he is going to tear you apart." Julian's expression didn't change. "I count on it. That's why the perimeter is rigged with enough explosives to level a city block. And that's why I have insurance." He pointed to the heavy oak doors at the far end of the room. "Echo," he commanded, "front and center." My breath hitched. Echo stepped out of the shadows. She was wearing full tactical gear, but she had ripped off the Kovac insignia. She held an assault rifle across her chest, her posture rigid, her face blank. She walked toward us and stopped 10 feet away. She didn't look at me. She stared at a point on the wall above my head, her jaw locked so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Echo," I whispered. The betrayal felt fresh again, a knife twisting in my gut. "Please, look at me." She didn't move. "You don't have to do this," I said, desperation clawing at my chest. "I know why you did it. I know about your brother, but this isn't the way." Julian chuckled. He walked over to Echo and patted her shoulder. She flinched, a microscopic movement, but I saw it. She hated his touch. "She has no choice, do you, Echo?" Julian said. "She is a good sister. She knows the price of loyalty." "Is he worth it?" I asked her, my voice rising. "Is your brother worth watching me die? Because that's what this is, Echo. He's going to kill me." Echo's eyes finally snapped to mine. They were pools of misery. For a second, the mask slipped, and I saw the terrified woman beneath the soldier. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. No sound came out. "Enough," Julian snapped. "Sentimental garbage." He walked back to the camera. It was a high-end cinema camera mounted on a heavy tripod. He checked the monitor. "We are live in 30 seconds, he announced. He picked up a tablet. "I sent the link to Nikolai's private server and to Kaelen's phone. They are watching. I can see the connection log. 2 viewers." My blood ran cold. Kaelen was watching. He was somewhere out there, staring at a screen, seeing me bound and helpless. I could only imagine the rage that was consuming him. "Don't give him the satisfaction," I told myself. "Don't cry. Don't beg." Julian picked up a cane from the table. It was black ebony with a silver handle shaped like a serpent. He weighed it in his hand, testing the balance. "The script is simple," Julian said. "We demonstrate the consequences of defiance. We break the Kovac spirit. And then, we end the bloodline." He checked the camera one last time. A small red tally light blinked on. "We are live," Julian said. He looked into the lens, his face composing itself into a mask of solemn regret. "Hello, Nikolai. Hello, Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice smooth and projecting clearly to the microphone. "I assume you recognize the location, and the guest." He stepped aside, revealing me to the camera. I sat up straight. I forced my shoulders back. I lifted my chin, exposing my throat, refusing to cower. I stared into the black glass of the lens as if I were staring into Kaelen's eyes. "I am not afraid," I tried to project. "I am a Kovac. I am strong." But my left hand, hidden behind the chair, was trembling. 1-2. 1-2. "You took something of mine," Julian said to the camera, walking slowly toward me. "You took my dignity at the docks. You took my territory. You thought you had won." He stopped beside me. He ran the cold silver tip of the cane down my arm. I shuddered, my skin crawling. "But in chess, you never take the king until you have removed his queen," Julian said. "And while Elara isn't a queen, she is a knight, a sister, a lover." He looked down at me with pure contempt. "You made a mistake, Elara. You thought you could run. You thought a dog like the Reaper could protect you from me." "He is twice the man you are," I said loudly, wanting the microphone to pick it up. "He is coming for you, Julian. You're a dead man walking." Julian's face tightened. The veneer of the polite businessman cracked, revealing the sadist underneath. "Defiance," he tutted. "We will have to correct that." He raised the cane. I saw Echo take a half step forward. Her hand twitched toward her pistol. "Echo!" Julian barked without looking at her. "Hold your position, or I make the call." Echo froze. She looked like she was vibrating, a war raging inside her. But she stayed put. Julian swung the cane. He didn't aim for my back or my shoulders. He aimed for my thigh, right where the muscle was thickest. Crack. The sound was sickening. The pain was immediate, sharp, and overwhelming. It felt like a hot iron rod had been driven through my leg. I screamed. I couldn't help it. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and animalistic. I thrashed against the zip ties, tears springing to my eyes instantly. Julian smiled at the camera. He looked energized by the sound of my pain. "That," he said, breathing slightly harder, "was for the disrespect." My leg throbbed with a pulse of agony that made the room swim. I gasped for air, trying to find my center, trying to lock the pain away like Kaelen had taught me. Focus, breathe, survive. Julian raised the cane again. "And this," he said, aiming for my ribs, "is to show you that no one, absolutely no one, steals from Julian Vance." I looked at the camera. The red light stared back, unblinking, recording my torture for the man who loved me. I looked at Echo. "Please," I whispered to her. She closed her eyes. A single tear tracked through the dirt on her cheek. Julian swung the cane down. I braced myself for the impact, praying that Kaelen was driving fast, praying that the end would come quickly. But deep down, I knew the show was just beginning.
Chapter 11. Kaelen. The scream coming from the tablet speakers was tinny, digitized and distorted by the connection lag. But I felt it in my teeth. I felt it in the marrow of my bones. I sat in the driver's seat of the armored SUV, the engine idling with a low, predatory rumble. The tablet was propped up on the dashboard. On the screen, pixelated and lagging, Julian Vance raised a black cane and brought it down on my wife's leg. Elara screamed. The sound tore through the confined space of the car like shrapnel. I didn't yell. I didn't punch the dashboard. A cold, black silence descended over me. It was the silence of the grave. It was the silence of the reaper. Beside me, Nikolai Kovac was a statue. He was watching the screen with eyes that had turned into chips of blue ice. He saw his sister bound and tortured. He saw the traitor, Echo, standing guard. He saw the man who had stolen his family gloating into the camera. "He broke her leg," Nikolai said. His voice was devoid of inflection. It was a flat line. "He dies slowly," I said. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather groaned under the pressure. "But Echo dies first." On the screen, Julian was talking again, preening. He was raising the cane for a second strike. "Now," Nikolai ordered. He didn't need to say it twice. I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. The floorboard vibrated against my boot. The SUV, a 3-ton beast of reinforced steel and bulletproof glass, surged forward like a missile leaving the silo. We were parked half a mile down the access road, hidden by the tree line. Ahead of us, the Vance estate gates loomed, 12 feet of wrought iron and stone, flanked by guard towers. "Drone is in position," Nikolai said, checking a separate monitor on his wrist. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. He tapped the detonator. Ahead of us, the world flashed white. The drone Echo had modified months ago, back when we thought she was on our side, dropped its payload directly onto the gate mechanism. The explosion was precise and devastating. The stone pillars shattered. The iron gates were ripped off their hinges, twisting into scrap metal that rained down onto the asphalt. I didn't lift my foot. We hit the smoke cloud at 80 miles an hour. Debris crunched under the run-flat tires. A piece of jagged iron scraped along the side of the car with a screech that sounded like a banshee, but we were through. "Contact front," I yelled. We roared up the long, winding driveway. The element of surprise lasted exactly 5 seconds. The guards in the surviving tower and the patrol units on the lawn opened fire. Bullets hammered the windshield. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Spiderwebs of white cracks bloomed on the glass, but the laminate held. "Hold fire," I told Nikolai. "Wait for the house." I drove with one hand on the wheel, my other hand resting on the assault rifle in the center console. I watched the tablet out of the corner of my eye. The feed was shaking. Now, the vibrations of the explosion must have reached the library. On the screen, Julian looked up. He looked confused. "Good. Be afraid." We crested the hill. The mansion spread out before us, a sprawling monument to blood money. Guards were pouring out of the front entrance, taking up positions behind the stone balustrades and parked luxury cars. They were setting up a firing line. "They are blocking the entrance," Nikolai noted calmly. "I see them," I said. "Go through them." I grinned. It was a feral baring of teeth. "With pleasure." I didn't aim for the gaps. I aimed for the blockade. I spun the wheel hard to the right, pulling the handbrake. The SUV drifted, turning sideways into a controlled slide. The heavy steel flank of the vehicle became a battering ram. We slammed into the line of parked cars. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. The force of the impact threw me against the harness, knocking the wind out of me. But the SUV plowed through the barricade, scattering guards like bowling pins. We came to a shuddering halt 10 feet from the front steps. "Move!" I roared. I kicked the door open. I rolled out onto the gravel, my rifle already up and tucked into my shoulder. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ozone. Gunfire erupted instantly. It was deafening. I double-tapped a guard who was trying to scramble out from under a crushed sedan. He dropped. I pivoted left. 2 more coming around the fountain. I dropped them both with controlled bursts. I wasn't fighting for territory today. I wasn't fighting for money. I was fighting for the woman who painted birds in trees. I was fighting for the mother of my child. Every shot was a promise. Every kill was a step closer to her. "Clear left!" Nikolai shouted. He was on the other side of the SUV, moving with the terrifying efficiency of a man trained by the best. He fired his handgun with one hand, calm as if he were at a shooting range. "To the door!" I yelled. We advanced. We moved as a unit, covering each other's blind spots. Bullets chipped the stone steps near my boots. One whizzed past my ear, close enough to feel the heat. I didn't flinch. I didn't care. If I died today, I would die on top of Julian Vance's corpse. We reached the massive oak front doors. They were locked. I didn't bother with the lockpick. I didn't bother with the keypad. I pulled the shotgun from the scabbard on my back. I aimed at the hinges. Boom! Boom! I kicked the door. It fell inward with a heavy crash. We breached the foyer. It was a kill zone. The foyer was a grand, open space with a marble staircase curving up to a balcony. It was beautiful, and it was full of shooters. "High ground," Nikolai warned. Men on the balcony rained fire down on us. I dove behind a marble pillar, debris raining down on my head as bullets chewed up the stone. "Where is the library?" Nikolai shouted over the roar of automatic fire. "East wing!" I yelled back, checking my mental map of the estate layout. "Ground floor, through the corridor." "Cover me!" Nikolai leaned out and laid down suppressive fire, forcing the men on the balcony to duck. I broke cover. I sprinted across the polished floor, my boots slipping slightly on the marble. I fired as I ran, sweeping the hallway entrance. A guard popped out. I put a round in his chest before he could raise his weapon. I reached the hallway arch. I pressed my back against the wall and reloaded. Nikolai joined me a second later, sliding across the floor on his knees, firing upward until he hit the cover of the arch. "We need to move faster," Nikolai breathed. He checked his magazine. "If Julian hears us coming..." "He hears us," I said grimly. "He knows." We moved down the east wing corridor. It was narrower here, close quarters. I took point. My world narrowed down to the sights of my rifle, room to room, door to door. A guard burst out of a side room. I slammed the butt of my rifle into his face, shattering his nose, and kicked him aside. I didn't stop to finish him. Nikolai put a bullet in him as he passed. We were a storm. We were inevitable. Then the lights went out. The power cut. The hallway plunged into gray twilight, lit only by the emergency strips on the floor. "He cut the power," Nikolai whispered. "He wants to slow us down," I said. "Or he wants to escape in the dark." "The library," Nikolai said. 50 yards. We moved silently now. The gunfire from the front of the house was muffled here. And then I heard it. Voices, screaming. It was coming from behind the double doors at the end of the hall. "Run, Elara!" The voice was faint, muffled by the heavy wood, but I recognized it. It was Echo. Then, a gunshot, distinct, a heavy caliber pistol, not a rifle, then chaos. She turned, Nikolai whispered, shock coloring his voice. She is fighting them. I didn't stop to analyze it. I didn't stop to wonder why the traitor was screaming for my wife to run. I ran. I closed the distance to the library doors in seconds. "Julian!" I roared. "I am coming for you!" I hit the doors with my shoulder, expecting them to fly open. They didn't budge. "Barricaded!" I yelled. I could hear the struggle inside. Furniture crashing, glass breaking, Elara screaming my name. "Kaelen!" Her voice was terrified, filled with pain. "I'm here," I shouted back. "Baby, I'm here." I stepped back. I raised my shotgun. "Blow it," Nikolai ordered. I aimed at the lock mechanism. I fired. The wood splintered, but the heavy desk or whatever they had shoved against it held firm. I cursed. I dropped the shotgun and grabbed the door handle, bracing my boot against the frame. "Help me," I grunted to Nikolai. He holstered his weapon and grabbed the other handle. Inside, another shot rang out. Then silence. My heart stopped. "Together!" I yelled. 1, 2, 3! We threw our combined weight against the doors. The barricade screeched across the floor. The wood groaned and snapped. The doors burst open, creating a gap just wide enough for a man to slip through. I didn't wait. I didn't check corners. I squeezed through the gap, my handgun drawn, stepping into the darkness of the library. The air smelled of gunpowder and blood. I raised my weapon, searching for a target, searching for Elara. "Drop it!" a voice screamed. I froze. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. Julian Vance was standing in the corner. He had Elara. He was holding her up by her hair, her feet barely touching the ground. She was limp, sobbing, and he had a gun pressed to her temple. "Take one more step, Reaper," Julian hissed, his eyes wide and manic in the gloom. "Take one step, and I paint the wall with her." I stood perfectly still. My gun was aimed at his head, but he was using her as a shield. Her face was right next to his. If I missed... "Kaelen," Elara whispered. I looked at her. Her face was bruised, her leg was bleeding, but she was alive. I looked to the left. Echo was on the floor. She was slumped against an overturned table. There was blood pooling beneath her. A lot of it. She was still gripping her pistol, but her hand was shaking violently. She tried to raise it, but she didn't have the strength. We were in. But we were in a standoff. And the devil had the hostage.
Chapter 12. Elara Pain has a sound. It was a high-pitched ringing in my ears that drowned out the hum of the floodlights and the chaotic beat of my own heart. My leg was on fire. The cane had struck the muscle with a force that felt like it had severed the nerve, leaving my thigh throbbing in a sickening, rhythmic cadence. Julian raised the cane again. He was smiling. It wasn't the smile of a businessman anymore. It was the smile of a man who had finally taken off his mask and revealed the rot underneath. "And this," Julian said, his voice distorted by the ringing in my ears, "is to show you that no one steals from—" Boom. The world shook. It wasn't a figure of speech. The floorboards beneath my chair jumped. The windows in the high alcoves rattled in their frames. A dull, concussive roar rolled over the estate, sounding like thunder that had struck the front lawn. Julian stumbled. The cane lowered. He looked toward the heavy velvet curtains, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "What was that?" he snapped. He looked at the tablet. The connection to the Livestream had glitched, the screen turning into a wash of static pixels. "The gate," Echo said. Her voice cut through the confusion like a razor blade. It was the first time she had spoken since the broadcast started. Julian spun on her. "What?" "That was a shaped charge," Echo said. She wasn't looking at the wall anymore. She was looking at me. Her eyes were wet, red-rimmed and terrifyingly clear. That was Kaelen. She looked at Julian. He's here. Julian sneered. Impossible. The perimeter sensors didn't even... Echo moved. It happened so fast my brain struggled to track it. 1 second she was standing at parade rest, a broken soldier obeying orders. The next, her hand blurred to her hip. She didn't draw the sidearm to threaten him. She drew it to kill. Bang! The cameraman standing near the tripod dropped without a sound. Bang! Bang! 2 guards standing by the bookshelf crumpled. Julian screamed. He threw himself behind the heavy oak desk, scrambling for cover like a rat. Traitor! Julian shrieked. Killer! Kill them both! Echo didn't waste time on him. She sprinted toward me. She slid on her knees across the Persian rug, a knife appearing in her other hand. Don't move! She hissed. She slashed the zip ties on my ankles. Then she spun me, sawing frantically at the plastic binding my wrists. Echo! I gasped. What are you doing? Saving my soul, she grunted. The plastic snapped. My arms fell free, numb and useless. Blood rushed back into my hands with a painful prickling sensation. Get up, Echo ordered. She grabbed my arm and hauled me to my feet. My bad leg gave way immediately. I cried out, falling against her. She caught me, taking my weight without flinching. She shoved a heavy pistol into my hand. It was warm from her body heat. Safety is off, she said. Point and shoot, don't think. Where is he? I asked, gripping her tactical vest, to stay upright. Where is Kaelen? Close, Echo said, but not close enough. Gunfire erupted in the hallway outside. We could hear it, the heavy, rhythmic thud of assault rifles. It sounded like a war zone. They are breaching the front, Echo said. Her eyes darted around the room. We need to buy them time. She looked at the double doors, the only way in and the only way out. Help me, she yelled. She threw herself at the heavy mahogany desk Julian had been hiding behind. Julian had scrambled away toward the corner, cowering behind a stack of overturned equipment. I limped over, grit my teeth against the agony in my thigh, and pushed. We shoved the desk against the doors. Then a bookshelf. Then a heavy armchair. Barricade! I heard a voice roar from the hallway. It sounded like thunder. It sounded like Kaelen. He's here, I sobbed. Let him in. I can't, Echo yelled. If I open these doors, Julian's backup will shred us before Kaelen clears the hallway. We have to hold the room. As if on cue, a secret panel in the wainscoting on the west wall slid open. I had forgotten about the hidden passages. Julian loved his secrets. 3 guards poured out of the wall. They were elite Vance security, dressed in black, carrying submachine guns. Down! Echo screamed. She tackled me. We hit the floor hard behind the overturned desk, just as the room exploded in noise. Bullets chewed up the wood above our heads. Splinters rained down on us like confetti. Echo rolled onto her back. She popped up, fired 2 shots, and ducked back down. 1 guard fell. Stay down, she told me. Her face was pale, sweat streaking through the dirt and camouflage paint. Don't move unless I tell you to. Echo, I said, grabbing her hand. Your brother. She looked at me. A sad, crooked smile touched her lips. He's gone, Elara. Julian killed him. She reloaded her weapon with shaking hands. I'm doing this for free. She popped up again. This time, the return fire was heavier. I heard a wet thud. Echo grunted. She fell back behind the desk, clutching her shoulder. Blood began to seep through her fingers, dark and fast. Echo! I'm fine, she wheezed. Just a scratch. It wasn't a scratch. It was a hole. The doors behind us shook. Something heavy slammed into them from the hallway. Kaelen! I screamed. Kaelen, the wall! The west wall! I didn't know if he could hear me over the gunfire. I didn't know if he could hear me over the roaring in my own ears. Another impact on the doors. The wood splintered. "They're coming through," Echo said. She looked at the secret panel where the remaining 2 guards were advancing. They were using the camera equipment for cover, flanking us. Echo looked at me. She looked at her wound. Then she looked at the guards. "I can't take them both," she whispered. "Not like this." She made a decision. I saw it happen. Her eyes hardened. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying resolve. "When I move," she said, "you crawl for the corner. Get behind the filing cabinet." "No," I said, realizing what she was doing. "Echo, don't." "Tell Kaelen," she started, then shook her head. "Never mind, just run." "Run, Elara," she screamed. She didn't stay behind cover. She stood up. She walked right out into the open, drawing the fire, making herself the only target in the room. She fired with both hands. One guard dropped, a bullet in his throat. The last guard turned his weapon on her. Bang! Echo spun. She took the round in her side. She didn't fall. She roared, a sound of pure defiance, and fired again. The guard collapsed, but she didn't see Julian. Julian had crawled out from the corner. He had picked up the fallen guard's weapon. He didn't shoot her. He lunged. He grabbed me. I had been crawling just like Echo said. But my bad leg dragged. I was too slow. Julian's hand tangled in my hair. He yanked me back with a force that snapped my neck. I screamed as he hauled me up, dragging me upright. "Enough!" he shrieked. He jammed the barrel of the gun against my temple. "Drop it!" he yelled at Echo. "Drop it or she dies!" Echo was on her knees. She was bleeding from 2 places now. She tried to raise her gun, but her arm wouldn't cooperate. It shook violently, then dropped. The gun clattered to the floor. "You lose," Julian hissed. He was panting, his eyes wild. "You all lose." Then the world shattered. The library doors didn't just open. They exploded inward. The barricade we had built, the heavy desk, the bookshelf, was swept aside like cardboard. 2 figures stepped through the smoke and splinters. One was sleek and deadly, moving with the precision of a scalpel. Nikolai, the other was a sledgehammer. Kaelen Thorne stepped into the room. He looked like a nightmare. He was covered in dust. His eyes were black voids. He held an assault rifle, but when he saw me, he lowered it slightly. He took in the scene in a fraction of a second. The dead guards. Echo bleeding on the floor. Julian holding me. "Drop it!" Julian screamed, tightening his grip on my hair. I whimpered. Kaelen froze. He stood amidst the wreckage of the door, his chest heaving. He looked at me. He saw the bruises. He saw the blood on my leg. "Take one more step, Reaper," Julian hissed. "Take one step and I paint the wall with her." The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the dying and the frantic beating of my heart. "Kaelen," I whispered. He looked at me. And in that look, I saw everything. I saw the apology. I saw the love. And I saw the terrifying realization that he couldn't take the shot. Julian was too close. I was the shield. We were at a stalemate. And Echo was dying on the floor between us.
Chapter 13. Kaelen. The distance between the door and the corner of the library was 30 feet. In my line of work, 30 feet is nothing. I could cover it in 2 seconds. I could put a bullet in a target the size of a coin from this distance without blinking. I had spent 15 years training my body to be a weapon that didn't hesitate and didn't miss. But I couldn't take the shot. Julian Vance knew it. He had positioned himself perfectly. His back was to the corner, protecting his flanks. He held Elara tight against his chest, his left arm hooked around her neck, choking her slightly. His right hand pressed the barrel of a Sig Sauer into her temple. Her face was right next to his. If I fired and he flinched, I would kill my wife. If I fired and the bullet overpenetrated, I would kill my wife. Math. It was just cold, hard math, and the probability of a clean kill was 0. "Back off!" Julian screamed. Spittle flew from his mouth. He looked like a cornered rat, vicious, terrified, and unpredictable. I held my rifle steady, aimed at the bridge of his nose, but I didn't squeeze the trigger. I took a slow step back. I held up my left hand, palm open. "I'm stepping back," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, detached. It was the voice of the Reaper, protecting the man inside who was screaming. "Easy, Julian, easy! Drop the gun!" Julian shrieked. "Kick it over here!" Nikolai stepped up beside me. He had his weapon drawn too, but he lowered it slightly. "You have nowhere to go, Julian," Nikolai said. His tone was reasonable, almost bored. "The house is surrounded. My men are securing the perimeter as we speak. Even if you kill her, you don't leave this room alive." "I don't care," Julian yelled. He yanked Elara's hair. She whimpered, a small, broken sound that made my vision blur with red rage. "If I die, I take the trash out with me." Elara's eyes met mine. They were wide and filled with tears. But she wasn't looking at the gun. She was looking at me. She was trying to tell me something. "I love you." Or maybe, "Goodbye." No, not goodbye. Not today. "What do you want?" I asked. "You want to walk? Fine, we let you walk." "Kaelen," Nikolai warned softly. "Shut up," I snapped at my boss. I looked at Julian. "I will give you a car. I will give you a head start. Just let her go." Julian laughed. It was a high, manic sound. "You think I'm stupid," he sneered. "I let her go, and you put a bullet in my brain before she hits the floor. No, she comes with me. She is my ticket to the helipad." He started to move. He dragged Elara sideways, inching toward a side door that led to the terrace. "Move aside," Julian ordered, "or I pull the trigger. I swear to God, Reaper, I will do it. I made her. I can unmake her." I tensed. I calculated the lunge. Too far. I looked down at the floor. Echo was lying in a pool of blood about 10 feet away from Julian. She looked dead. Her skin was gray, her eyes closed. One arm was flung out, resting near the body of a dead guard. Julian had forgotten about her. He was focused entirely on me and Nikolai. To him, Echo was just debris, but I saw her fingers twitch. She wasn't dead. Her hand moved, inching across the rug. It closed around something on the dead guard's belt. A flashbang, a stun grenade. My heart skipped a beat. Echo's eyes opened, just a slit. She looked at me. She didn't signal, she didn't nod. She just tightened her grip on the canister. She pulled the pin. She didn't have the strength to throw it. She just let the lever fly and rolled the metal canister across the floor. It clattered against the hardwood. Clink, clink, clink. Julian heard it. His eyes darted down. "What?" He saw the grenade rolling toward his feet. Instinct is a funny thing. It overrides logic. A trained soldier would have turned away to shield their eyes. A desperate man tries to kick it away. Julian let go of Elara's hair with one hand to try and kick the grenade. "Now!" I roared. "Down!" Nikolai yelled. Elara dropped. She didn't wait. She went limp, collapsing to the floor just as the grenade went off. Bang! Even with my eyes squeezed shut and my mouth open to equalize the pressure, the sound was deafening. The flash burned through my eyelids. The concussion wave hit me in the chest like a physical blow, but I was moving before the sound registered. I dropped my rifle. It was too long for close quarters. I drew the knife from my boot as I sprinted across the room. Julian was screaming. He was blind, deaf, and disoriented. He was flailing, firing his gun wildly into the ceiling. I hit him like a freight train. I didn't tackle him. I drove my shoulder into his chest, hearing ribs snap under the impact. We slammed into the bookshelf behind him. Heavy encyclopedias rained down on us. The gun flew out of his hand and skittered across the floor. We hit the ground. I was on top of him instantly. He tried to fight. He clawed at my face, his fingernails gouging my cheek. He was strong, fueled by the desperate strength of a dying man. But I wasn't a man anymore. I was pure hate. I grabbed his wrist, the one that had held the gun against my wife's head, and I twisted. There was a wet crunch. He howled. "That!" I snarled, spitting blood from my split lip onto his face, was for the threats. I punched him. I didn't use technique. I used rage. My fist connected with his nose, flattening it. Blood sprayed across my knuckles. He tried to knee me in the groin. I shifted my weight and pinned his legs with my own. I grabbed him by the lapels of his ruined suit and slammed his head against the floor. Thud. "That," I shouted over the ringing in my ears, "was for the cane." I hit him again and again. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to take 20 years of pain and force it back down his throat in 20 seconds. I wanted to make him feel every cold night, every hunger pang, every moment of fear he had inflicted on Elara. He stopped fighting. He was just a bloody mess beneath me, wheezing, his hands fluttering uselessly. My hand found the handle of my knife. I raised it. I was going to carve him. I was going to take his heart out while it was still beating. "Kaelen!" The voice cut through the red haze. It wasn't Nikolai. It was Elara. I froze. The knife hovered inches above Julian's throat. I looked up. Elara was huddled on the floor a few feet away. She was covered in dust. Her leg was bleeding freely. She looked terrified. But she wasn't looking at Julian. She was looking at me. She crawled toward me. She dragged her bad leg, wincing, until she was close enough to touch my arm. Her hand was shaking. 1, 2. 1, 2. She placed her hand on my wrist, right over the pulse point. "Don't," she whispered. I looked at her wild-eyed. "He deserves it. He deserves worse." "I know," she said. Her voice was steady, despite the tears streaking her face. "He is garbage. But you aren't. Don't let him turn you into a monster, Kaelen. Not for me." I looked down at Julian. He was conscious, barely. He looked up at me with one swollen eye. There was fear there. Finally, the arrogant mastermind was gone. There was only a beaten animal. "Please," Julian gurgled. Blood bubbled past his lips. "I can pay. I have accounts." Elara looked at him with disgust. It wasn't hate. It was pity. "You have nothing," she said. She looked at me. "End it, but make it clean. Don't torture him. He isn't worth the stain on your soul." I took a deep breath. The red haze receded, leaving behind a cold, sharp clarity. She was right. Torture was emotional. Execution was business. I stood up. I hauled Julian up by his collar. He hung limp in my grip, his feet dragging on the floor. I threw him toward the center of the room. He collapsed in a heap near Nikolai. Nikolai was standing there, his gun in his hand. He looked from me to Julian. "Your call," I said. "He's your problem." Nikolai looked at the man who had stolen his sister. He looked at the man who had ordered the hit on Echo's brother. Nikolai walked over to Julian. He didn't say a word. He didn't make a speech. He didn't offer a final quip. He just aimed. Julian looked up. He opened his mouth to beg. Bang! Nikolai put a single bullet in Julian's forehead. Julian Vance fell back. He hit the floor and didn't move. It was over. The silence that followed was heavy. The dust motes danced in the shafts of light coming from the broken floodlights. I turned to Elara. I dropped to my knees. I didn't care about the glass on the floor. I pulled her into my arms. I buried my face in her neck, breathing in the smell of her, sweat and vanilla and life. I got you, I whispered. My voice broke. I got you, Elara. She clung to me. She was shaking apart now that the adrenaline was fading. She sobbed against my chest, gripping my tactical vest like it was a lifeline. You came, she cried. You came back. Always, I said. I will always come back. Echo, she gasped, pulling back suddenly. Echo! I looked across the room. Nikolai was already there. He was kneeling beside the overturned table where Echo lay. He had taken off his jacket, and he was pressing it against her side. Echo, Nikolai said. His voice was urgent. The cool, detached king was gone. He looked desperate. Stay with us. Medics are 2 minutes out. Stay with us. I picked Elara up. She winced as her leg moved, but she didn't complain. I carried her over to where our friend was dying. I sat Elara down next to Echo. Echo's eyes were open. They were glassy. She was staring at the ceiling, her breath coming in shallow, wet rattles. She turned her head. She saw us. She saw Julian's body on the floor. A faint, bloody smile touched her lips. Did we win? She whispered. It was barely a sound. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. We won. You threw a hell of a pitch, Echo. Strike, she wheezed. She looked at Nikolai. He was applying pressure to the wound, his hands slick with her blood. Boss, she said. Don't talk, Nikolai ordered. Save your strength. You're going to be fine. I am going to buy you the best surgeons in the world. You are going to make it. Echo shook her head. A small, jerky movement. Too late, she murmured. Cold. She looked at Elara. She tried to lift her hand. Elara grabbed it instantly, holding it to her cheek. Thank you, Elara sobbed. Thank you for saving me. Echo looked at me. Her gaze was losing focus. The light was fading. Reaper, she rasped. I'm here, I said. She coughed, blood speckling her chin. She squeezed Elara's hand weakly. Tell Kaelen, she whispered. I leaned closer. Tell me what? Her eyes drifted to mine. There was a spark of the old humor there, the last ember of the fire that was Echo. His coffee was always terrible. She let out a long breath. Her chest settled. Her eyes stayed open, but the spark was gone. The hand in Elara's grip went limp. Echo? Elara whispered. Echo. I watched the life leave her. The traitor. The hero. The woman who had broken our hearts and then stitched them back together with bullets. She was gone. Nikolai stopped pressing on the wound. He stared at her face for a long moment. Then, with a gentleness I had never seen in him, he reached out and closed her eyes. He sat back on his heels. He looked at his bloody hands. Let's go home, Nikolai said. His voice was hollow. I pulled Elara into my lap. I shielded her eyes from the bodies. Yeah, I said. Let's go home. But as I looked at the carnage around us, at the dead villain and the dead friend, I knew that home wasn't just a place anymore. It was the people who survived to see it. And we were the only ones left.
Chapter 14. Elara. The silence that follows violence is heavy. It has a weight to it, pressing down on your chest like a lead apron. In the library, the air was still thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. The ringing in my ears from the flashbang was fading, replaced by the low, wet sound of Nikolai crying. He wasn't sobbing. Kings don't sob. He was kneeling beside Echo's body, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking with silent tremors. He had covered her face with his suit jacket, hiding the glassy stare that haunted me. But he hadn't moved away. He held her hand, the hand that had taught me to pick locks, the hand that had betrayed me, the hand that had saved me. I sat on the floor, my bad leg throbbing with a pulse that made black spots dance in my vision. I leaned against Kaelen. He was a solid wall of heat and muscle behind me, his arms wrapped around my chest, holding me together. "We need to move," Kaelen whispered into my hair. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding on glass. "The medics are here. The police won't be far behind, even with Nikolai's payroll." "I can't leave her," I whispered. "She's gone, Elara." "I know," I said, "but she shouldn't be alone. Not here, not in this house." The library doors, or what was left of them, creaked. Men in dark suits entered. They weren't police. They were the cleaners. The men who made problems disappear. They carried bags. They carried chemicals. They looked at Julian's body with professional indifference. One of them moved toward Echo. "Don't touch her," Nikolai said. He didn't look up. He didn't raise his voice. But the tone froze the room. It was the voice of the Pakan. The cleaner stopped. "Sir, we need to secure the site before—" "I said don't touch her," Nikolai repeated. He stood up slowly. He looked wrecked. His white shirt was stained with blood. His face was pale, his eyes hollowed out. He looked at the cleaner. "She is not disposal. She is family." He bent down and picked her up. It was an awkward, heavy lift. Echo was dead weight in his arms. Her tactical gear clattered softly. Her hand fell limp, swinging toward the floor. Nikolai adjusted his grip, pulling her against his chest. He didn't care about the blood ruining his shirt. "I will take her," Nikolai said to Kaelen. "You take Elara. Get her to the clinic, not the hospital. We keep this internal." Kaelen nodded. "Understood." Nikolai walked out of the room. He walked past Julian's corpse without even looking at it. He carried the traitor out into the sunlight. Kaelen shifted behind me. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But let's go." He scooped me up. The movement sent a bolt of white-hot agony through my thigh. I gasped, biting my lip to keep from screaming. "I know," Kaelen soothed, moving quickly. "I know it hurts. I've got you." We left the library. We walked through the ruins of the hallway. I saw the bodies of the guards Echo had killed. I saw the bullet, holes in the walls. I saw the portrait of Julian hanging crookedly in the foyer. The glass shattered. We stepped out the front door. The fresh air hit me like a slap. It smelled of pine and gasoline. The driveway was a war zone. The armored SUV was smashed into the barricade of luxury cars. Smoke was rising from the ruined gatehouse in the distance. Dozens of Kovac soldiers were patrolling the lawn, securing the perimeter. They stopped and watched us pass. The Reaper carrying the prize. The boss carrying the fallen. Kaelen didn't stop at the SUV. It was totaled. He walked to a waiting black sedan. A driver opened the back door. Kaelen slid in with me, refusing to put me down on the seat. He kept me in his lap, cradling me like a child. "Drive," he ordered. "The clinic. Fast." The car pulled away. I looked out the window. I watched the Vance estate recede. The smoke, the stone walls, the prison where I had spent 20 years being invisible. It was getting smaller. It was disappearing. "It's over," Kaelen whispered. He pressed a kiss to my temple. He was shaking. I realized then that he was running on adrenaline fumes. The man who had stormed a fortress was starting to crash. "Is it?" I asked. I looked at his hands. They were covered in dried blood. Julian's blood. Echo's blood. "We killed them, Kaelen, but it doesn't feel like winning." "It's not winning," he said darkly. "It's surviving. There's a difference." He grabbed a bottle of water from the console. He opened it and poured some onto a handkerchief. "Let me see your leg," he said gently. I winced as he moved the torn fabric of my jeans. The skin was purple and swollen, distorted. The bone wasn't sticking out, but the shape was wrong. Kaelen's jaw tightened. Femur is intact, I think, but deep muscle trauma, maybe a fracture. He cleaned the wound gently. The cool water felt good. Echo saved me, I said. The tears started again, leaking silently out of my eyes. She walked right into the fire. She squared her debt, Kaelen said. She shouldn't have had to, I sobbed. She wanted to tell you something, about the coffee. Kaelen let out a short, rough sound. It might have been a laugh or a sob. Yeah, he said. She always hated my coffee, said I brewed it like tar. He rested his forehead against mine. She wanted you to laugh, he said. Even at the end, she was trying to protect you from the horror of it. We drove in silence for a while. The city skyline appeared in the distance, gray and indifferent to our tragedy. What happens now? I asked. Kaelen looked at me. His eyes were dark, intense. Now we heal, he said. We bury our dead. We rebuild. And Julian? Gone, Kaelen said. His organization will be absorbed. His name will be erased. He is dust, Elara. I leaned my head against his chest. I listened to his heartbeat. It was steady. Strong. I thought about the mural I had started in my sketchbook. The wolf and the girl. I needed to add a bird. A gray, grumpy bird watching over them. The car slowed. We pulled into the underground entrance of a private medical facility owned by the syndicate. The doors opened. Medical staff were waiting with a gurney. I can walk, I lied. You really can't, Kaelen said. He lifted me onto the gurney. But when the nurses tried to wheel me away, he didn't let go of my hand. Sir, you need to wait in the... A nurse started. Kaelen gave him a look that would have stopped a tank. I go where she goes, Kaelen growled. The nurse looked at the blood on Kaelen's vest, the gun on his hip, and the look in his eyes. Right this way, the nurse squeaked. They wheeled me into a trauma room. Kaelen stood in the corner while they cut my jeans off. He watched while they x-rayed my leg. He watched while they stitched the cut on my forehead. He was a sentinel, a gargoyle warding off evil spirits. When the doctor finally left, giving me a heavy dose of painkillers and telling me I had a hairline fracture and severe contusions, the room went quiet. Kaelen walked over to the bed. He looked exhausted. The adrenaline was gone, leaving him gray and hollow-eyed. He sat on the edge of the mattress. He took my hand. You're safe, he said. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Come here, I whispered. I patted the narrow space beside me. I'm dirty, he said. Blood, dust. I don't care. He hesitated, then climbed onto the bed. He lay down beside me, careful of my leg. He wrapped his arm around my waist and buried his face in my neck. He let out a long, shuddering breath. I thought I lost you, he whispered. When the feed cut. When I saw him holding the gun. You didn't, I said. I ran my fingers through his gritty hair. You found me. We lay there in the sterile white room, holding on to each other while the painkillers pulled me down into a soft, dark haze. I was safe. The monster was dead. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Echo on the floor. I heard the gunshot. We had survived. But survival had a cost. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that the hardest part wasn't the war. It was going to be living with the silence that came after.
Chapter 15. Kaelen Black was the uniform of my life. I wore it to kill. I wore it to negotiate. And today, I wore it to bury the only friend I had who wasn't on a payroll. I stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom of the Spire. The glass was pristine, recently replaced after the shooting, but the reflection staring back at me looked cracked. I adjusted my tie. It felt like a noose. Behind me, Elara was sitting on the edge of the bed. She was struggling with the zipper of her dress. It was a simple black sheath, high-necked, long-sleeved. It covered the fading bruises on her arms and the bandages on her thigh. I watched her in the mirror. She hissed in pain as she shifted her weight. Her leg was healing, but the bone bruise from Julian's cane was deep. It would take weeks before she walked without a limp. "Let me," I said. I turned and walked over to her. I brushed her hands away gently. I pulled the zipper up. My knuckles grazed the nape of her neck. She shivered, not from cold, from the ghost of memory. Julian had grabbed her hair right there. "You don't have to go," I said quietly. "Nikolai understands. You are injured. No one expects you to stand in the mud." Elara looked up at me. Her face was pale, the dark circles under her eyes stark against her skin. She looked fragile, but her eyes were made of iron. "She has no one else," Elara said. "Her brother is dead. Her parents are gone. If we don't go, she goes into the ground alone." "She has Nikolai," I said. "Nikolai is angry," Elara countered. "He is grieving, but he is angry. I need to be there to make sure he doesn't, I don't know, say something he will regret." I nodded. She was right. Nikolai Kovac was a man of rules. Treason was the ultimate sin in our world. Even though Echo had redeemed herself in blood, the stain remained. I knelt down and picked up Elara's boots. No heels today. Just flat, sensible leather boots that would give her traction on the wet grass. I slid them onto her feet, lacing them carefully so they wouldn't press against the swelling in her ankle. "We are going to the Kovac grounds," I reminded her, "but not the family plot." "I know," she whispered. "The hill." "It was the best I could do," I said. "Nikolai wouldn't allow a traitor inside the gates, even a hero traitor." "It's okay," Elara said. She touched my cheek. "The hill has a better view anyway. Echo always liked a vantage point." I helped her stand. She leaned heavily on me, her fingers digging into my bicep. I took her weight without complaint. I would carry her for the rest of my life if I had to. We took the armored sedan. I drove. I didn't trust drivers anymore. I didn't trust anyone I couldn't see. The drive to the outskirts of the city was silent. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet. The air pressure was low, giving me a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. We arrived at the Kovac estate. It was a sprawling sanctuary of green, lawns, ancient oaks, and white marble mausoleums. This was where the kings of the city were buried. It was hallowed ground. But we didn't drive through the main iron gates. I pulled the car over on the service road that ran along the perimeter fence. Nikolai was already there. He was standing alone on a grassy knoll that overlooked the city skyline. The wind whipped his black trench coat around his legs. He wasn't wearing a hat. He stood exposed to the elements, watching a hole in the ground. There were no priests, no mourners, just two gravediggers leaning on their shovels by a truck, smoking cigarettes, waiting for the order to work, and a simple black coffin. I parked the car. I got out and opened the door for Elara. She took my arm. We walked up the slope. The grass was slick. I held her tight, ready to catch her if she slipped. Nikolai turned as we approached. He looked terrible. He was shaved. His hair was slicked back. His suit was pressed. But he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red-rimmed. "You came," Nikolai said. His voice was rough. "Of course we came," Elara said. She let go of my arm and limped the last few feet to stand beside her brother. She took his hand. He didn't pull away. He squeezed her fingers so hard I saw his knuckles turn white. "Is this it?" I asked, looking at the coffin. "No service?" "She wasn't religious," Nikolai said. "She believed in ammo and payroll. A priest would have offended her." He looked down at the box. It was unadorned. No cross, no nameplate, just wood. "Inside the gates," Nikolai said, gesturing to the wrought iron fence 20 yards away, "is for family, for those who kept the oath." He looked at the grave at his feet. "This is for those who broke it, but who we loved anyway." It was a harsh distinction, but it was fair. Echo had drugged us. She had handed Elara over to a monster. She had made a choice that almost destroyed us all. That she died fixing it didn't change the fact that she broke it in the first place. "She would have hated the family plot," Elara said softly. "Too crowded. Too many old men judging her tattoos." Nikolai let out a short, wet laugh. "True." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flask. He unscrewed the cap and took a long pull. Then he poured a generous splash onto the grass at the head of the grave. "For the road," Nikolai whispered. He handed the flask to me. I took a drink. It was vodka. Cheap vodka. The kind Echo used to drink when she was off duty because she said the expensive stuff tasted like pretentious water. I poured a splash for her. "You were a pain in my ass, Echo," I said to the coffin. "You were loud. You were reckless. You had terrible taste in movies." I paused. My throat felt tight. "But you were the best backup I ever had. Rest easy." I handed the flask to Elara. She didn't drink. She just held it. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a flower. It wasn't a rose. It was a white oleander. Beautiful, resilient, and poisonous enough to stop a heart. She stepped closer to the edge of the grave. "I forgive you," Elara whispered. The wind carried her voice away, snatching the words before they could settle. "I forgive you for the snow," she said. "I forgive you for the fear, because you came back. You came back for me when you could have run." She dropped the flower. It fluttered down, landing on the black wood with a soft tap. "Find your brother," Elara said, "and tell him you tried." She stepped back, her leg trembling. I moved instantly, wrapping my arm around her waist to support her. Nikolai stepped forward. He reached into his other pocket. He pulled out a small object. It was a poker chip. A generic red chip from one of the underground casinos. Echo used to shuffle them when she was thinking. It was her fidget spinner. Her worry stone. Nikolai rubbed the chip with his thumb. "You broke my heart, Mia," he said, using her real name. It sounded strange in the open air, intimate. "You broke my heart, and then you saved my sister." He tossed the chip into the grave. "We are square," he said. He turned to the gravediggers. He nodded once. The men crushed their cigarettes and picked up their shovels. The sound of dirt hitting the wood was a hollow, final thud. It was the sound of a door closing forever. We stood there until the hole was filled. We stood there until the mound of fresh earth was packed down. The rain finally started. It began as a mist, then turned into a steady, cold drizzle. "Come back to the compound," Nikolai said. He wiped rain or tears from his face. "Umberto made stew. We should eat." "Not tonight," I said. "Elara is in pain. She needs to rest." Nikolai looked at his sister. He scrutinized the lines of pain around her mouth. "Okay," he said. "Take her home, lock the doors." "Always," I said. Nikolai looked at the grave one last time. "I will order a stone," he said. "Just her name, and the date. And loyal, Elara suggested. Nikolai looked at her. His expression was hard, the Pakan mask slipping back into place. No, he said. Not loyal. Brave. That is what she was. Bravery is action. Loyalty is a state of being. She failed at one, but she mastered the other. He turned and walked toward his car, his coat billowing behind him like a dark sail. I watched him go. He was the king of the city, but he looked smaller today. Let's go, I said to Elara. We walked back down the hill. The rain plastered my hair to my skull. It mixed with the mud on our boots. Elara was quiet in the car. She stared out the window at the gray blur of the passing city. Are you okay? I asked, breaking the silence. No, she said. I feel empty, like someone scooped me out. That's grief, I said. It passes, or it settles. It stops being a scream and becomes a whisper. Does it? She asked. She looked at me. You have lost people before. Does it ever go away? I thought about the men I had served with. I thought about the friends I had buried over the years. No, I said honestly. It doesn't go away. You just grow around it. Like a tree growing around a fence wire. The scar becomes part of the structure. She reached across the console and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. I don't want to live at the Spire anymore, she said suddenly. I glanced at her. What? The Spire, she said. It's cold. It's concrete. It feels like where you kept the hostage. It feels like a fortress. It is a fortress, I said. That's why we live there. It's safe. I don't want a fortress, she said. I want a home. I want a garden. I want windows that open. I want a place where the ghosts don't know the entry code. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Moving was a security nightmare. The Spire was a grid I controlled. A house with a garden was a variable. But I looked at her. I saw the exhaustion in her eyes. I saw the way she was holding herself, as if she were waiting for the next blow. She needed light. She needed to heal. And she couldn't heal in a mausoleum in the sky. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay? We will move, I said. I will find a house, a real house, with a yard and a fence and a security system that Echo would have approved of. And a studio? She asked. For painting? And a studio, I agreed. With north-facing windows. I hear that's good for the light. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. It was the first one I had seen in days. You know about north-facing windows? I researched it, I admitted. When I bought you the sketchbook, I wanted to know what you needed. She squeezed my hand. Thank you, she whispered. We drove through the rain. The city felt different now. The war was over. Julian was dead. The threat was gone. But as I drove, my eyes still scanned the mirrors. I still checked the overpasses. I still mapped the escape routes. Echo was dead. She was buried on a hill outside the gates. But her lesson remained. Trust no one. Check your blind spots. And if you have to go out shooting. I lifted Elara's hand to my lips and kissed her knuckles. We are going to be okay, I said. I know, she said. And for the first time since the library doors burst open, I believed it. Chapter 16. Kaelen 6 months. In the life of a city, 6 months is a heartbeat. In the life of a criminal empire, it is an eternity. I parked the black sedan in the driveway of the new house. It wasn't the Spire. It wasn't a fortress of concrete and steel rising above the smog. It was a sprawling mid-century estate on the northern edge of the city, surrounded by 3 acres of woods and a 10-foot privacy wall that I had reinforced with sensors sensitive enough to detect a stray cat. I turned off the engine. I didn't get out immediately. I sat in the silence, letting the hum of the road fade from my ears. I looked at the passenger seat. There was a briefcase there. Inside were the final contracts for the dissolution of the Vance cartel. It was done. Julian Vance's shipping routes, his warehouses, his laundering fronts, they all belonged to Nikolai now. We had spent half a year scrubbing the Vance name from the ledgers. We had fired the loyalists, bought off the mercenaries, and buried the ones who refused to kneel. The war was over. The peace was profitable, but peace made my skin itch. I got out of the car. I walked to the front door. I didn't just unlock it. I scanned the keypad for tampering. I checked the camera feed on my phone to ensure the loop hadn't been hacked. I listened to the wind in the trees, separating the rustle of leaves from the sound of footsteps. Old habits didn't die. They just moved to a nicer zip code. I entered the house. Clear, I murmured to myself. It was a ritual. The house smelled of roasted garlic and turpentine. A strange combination, but it was the smell of my new life. "Elara?" I called out. "In the studio." Her voice floated back. I walked through the living room. It was furnished with things that were soft. Velvet sofas, thick rugs, things that couldn't hurt you if you fell against them. It was Elara's influence. She was trying to build a nest. I was just trying to fortify the perimeter. I found her in the sunroom. We had converted it into a studio the week we moved in. The north-facing windows let in a cool, steady light that she said was perfect for color theory. She was standing at an easel, her back to me. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts, splattered with paint, and leggings. Her hair was tied up in a messy knot, held in place by a paintbrush. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her. She was painting. Before, in the cabin, she had painted trees. She had painted light. She had painted hope. The canvas in front of her now was different. It was a seascape, but not a calm beach. It was a storm at night. The water was black and violent, churning against jagged rocks. The sky was a bruise of purple and charcoal. It was chaotic. It was dangerous. It was beautiful. "You're home early," she said, without turning around. "Nikolai kicked me out," I said. "He said I was looming. Apparently I make the accountants nervous." She turned then. She smiled. It was a real smile, but it didn't reach her eyes completely. There was always a shadow there now, a sliver of the girl who had been tied to a chair in a library. "You do loom," she agreed. "It's the eyebrows." She put down her palette and wiped her hands on a rag. She walked over to me. I kissed her. She tasted like peppermint tea. I pulled back and looked at her. "You look tired." "I'm fine," she said automatically. It was her reflex. "I'm fine. I'm safe. Don't worry." "You're pale," I countered. "And you didn't finish your breakfast this morning. I checked the trash." She rolled her eyes. "You went through the garbage? That is borderline obsessive, Kaelen." "It's thorough," I corrected. "Why didn't you eat?" She sighed. She leaned back against the work table. "I don't know. The eggs smelled wrong. Metallic." My radar pinged. Metallic? Like poison? I thought about the grocery delivery. I thought about the new driver Nikolai had hired. "No," Elara said, laughing softly. She reached out and smoothed the frown between my brows. "Not poison, just gross. My stomach has been off for a few weeks, probably stress." "We are safe," I said. "The threat is gone." "I know," she said. "But the body remembers, Kaelen. Sometimes my leg aches when it rains. Sometimes my stomach turns when I smell sulfur. It's just aftermath." I wrapped my arms around her. I held her tight. grounding her, grounding myself. I will make dinner, I said. Something bland. Rice, chicken. That sounds boring, she murmured against my chest. But safe. Safe is good. I went to the kitchen. I cooked. I watched the security monitors on the tablet propped up against the knife block. Sector 4, the garden, was clear. Sector 1, the gate, was secure. We ate in the kitchen. It was quiet. Domestic. Suddenly, Elara pushed her bowl away. She clamped a hand over her mouth. Elara? She didn't answer. She scrambled off the stool and ran for the downstairs bathroom. I was right behind her. I found her kneeling on the tile floor, gripping the porcelain rim. She was retching, her body convulsing. I dropped to my knees beside her. I pulled her hair back with one hand and rubbed her back with the other. Breathe, I said. I've got you. She heaved until there was nothing left. She slumped back against the cabinet, gasping, her face damp with sweat. Okay, I said, my voice clipped. We are going to the clinic. Now. No, she wheezed. No doctors. I hate the smell of the clinic. You are sick, Elara. This isn't just stress. It's not a virus, Kaelen, she said. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of terror and wonder. Then what is it? I demanded. Did you eat something at the studio? Did you inhale fumes? She shook her head. She took my hand, the hand that had killed men, the hand that had broken bones, and she placed it on her stomach. It was flat, warm. I'm late, she whispered. I stared at her. Late for what? She gave me a look that said, you are a genius tactician but an idiot man. Late, she repeated. My cycle, 3 weeks late. The world stopped spinning. The air left the room. I looked at my hand on her stomach. I looked at her face. Pregnant, I said. The word felt heavy, foreign. Yes, she said. I took a test this morning, while you were at the meeting. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic stick. She handed it to me. 2 pink lines. I stared at them. I treated the object like it was a detonator. In a way, it was. It was a bomb that blew up the careful, controlled life we had built. A baby, I said. Yeah, she whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. Are you mad? I looked at her. Mad? It's dangerous, she said, her voice trembling. Bringing a child into this life, into this house. We have enemies, Kaelen. We have ghosts. I dropped the stick. I grabbed her face in both hands. Look at me, I commanded. She met my gaze. We have enemies, I agreed. And I will kill them. We have ghosts, and I will bury them. I moved my thumb across her cheekbone. This, I said, nodding at her stomach, is a victory. Do you understand? Julian wanted to end your line. He wanted to break you. This is proof that he failed. She let out a sob. She threw her arms around my neck. I held her. I held them both. A baby, I whispered into her hair. The reality of it started to sink in. My chest felt tight, expanding with an emotion I couldn't name. It was bigger than relief, bigger than joy. It was terror, pure, unadulterated terror. I had failed to protect her once. I had let her be taken. I had watched her be tortured. Now there was something smaller, something more fragile. I need to upgrade the perimeter, I said, the thought tumbling out. The sensor grid isn't enough. We need pressure plates. And the windows. The glass is bulletproof, but I should reinforce the frames. Elara pulled back. She was crying, but she was laughing too. Kaelen, she said, stop. I can't stop, I said. I have to secure the nest. She kissed me. It silenced my tactical analysis. "We are safe," she said. "You made us safe." I rested my forehead against hers. "I will never let anything touch you," I swore. "Or the baby. I will burn the world down again if I have to." "I know," she said, "but let's hope you don't have to." We stayed on the bathroom floor for a long time. It wasn't romantic. It smelled of sickness and tile cleaner, but it felt holy. "We have to tell Nikolai," Elara said eventually. I groaned. "He is going to be insufferable." "He is going to cry," she predicted, "and then he is going to try to buy us a hospital." "He probably already owns one," I said. I helped her up. I carried her to the living room and settled her on the sofa. I covered her with a blanket. "I'm going to check the locks," I said. She nodded. She knew I needed to do it. I needed the ritual. I walked the perimeter of the house. I checked every window. I checked every door. I looked at the monitors. I stood by the back door, looking out into the dark woods. Somewhere out there, the world was cold and cruel. Somewhere, there were men who would want to hurt us just because of the name we carried. I touched the glass. I wasn't just the enforcer anymore. I wasn't just the husband. I was a father. The word settled on my shoulders like a mantle of lead and gold. I turned away from the darkness. I looked back into the living room. Elara was resting her hand on her stomach, staring at the fire. I walked back to her. I sat on the floor beside the sofa. I took her hand. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about names," I lied. I was thinking about sniper positions. I was thinking about escape routes. I was thinking about how to teach a child to survive without breaking them. "Roman," she said softly. I looked at her. "Roman?" "If it's a boy," she said, "it means strong, powerful." "I like it," I said. "Roman Thorne." It sounded like a shield. "And if it's a girl?" I asked. She smiled, a secret, knowing smile. "Mia," she whispered. My heart stuttered. Mia, Echo's name. "Yeah," I said, my voice thick. "Mia is good." I laid my head on her lap. Her fingers carded through my hair. We sat in the quiet house, surrounded by invisible walls and visible scars. The war was over, but the vigil never ended. And for the first time in my life, I had something that was truly worth watching over.
Chapter 17. Elara. The smell of oil paint used to mean escape. It was the scent of the hours I stole for myself in the drafty attic of the Vance estate, hiding from a father who saw me only as a bargaining chip. Now the smell meant home. I stood in the center of the nursery, a paintbrush in one hand and my other hand resting on the swell of my stomach. 8 months. I felt like a planet in orbit. My center of gravity had shifted, my ankles were swollen, and the little occupant inside was currently using my bladder as a trampoline. But I was happy. A deep, bone-settling happiness that terrified me if I looked at it too closely. I dipped the brush into a pot of silver gray. I needed one last touch. "You are on the ladder again." The voice came from the doorway. It was low, rough, and laced with the kind of protective disapproval that only Kaelen Thorne could manage. I didn't turn around. I carefully dabbed the paint onto the wall. "It is a step stool, Kaelen," I corrected. "I am 12 inches off the floor. I am safer here than I am walking down the stairs." I heard his boots cross the room. Heavy, rhythmic, the sound of safety. He stopped behind me. His large hands settled on my waist. They were warm, grounding. 12 inches is high enough to fall, he rumbled, and you are carrying precious cargo. "I am the cargo," I teased. "The baby is just the passenger." He lifted me. He didn't let me step down, he just effortlessly picked me up and set me on the floor. He turned me around. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes, remnants of late-night perimeter checks and early morning meetings with Nikolai. The syndicate was quiet. The city was under control, but Kaelen never really slept. The Reaper was always watching the door. But when he looked at me, the hardness in his face melted away. He brushed a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "How is the masterpiece?" I stepped back, leaning against his chest. He wrapped his arms around me, resting his chin on top of my head. "It's done," I said. "I think." We looked at the wall together. It wasn't a typical nursery mural. There were no pastel bunnies or smiling suns. It was a forest. I had painted the view from the glass cabin where we had fallen in love. The trees were tall and dark, their branches heavy with snow. The light was blue and twilight dim, filtering through the pine needles. It looked cold, but it also looked like a sanctuary. A place where the world couldn't touch you. In the center of the trees, watching the room with amber eyes, was a wolf. It was a massive, charcoal-gray beast. I had painted the scars on its muzzle. I had painted the tension in its shoulders. It looked dangerous. It looked ready to kill. But it was sitting. It was calm. And it was curled protectively around a single, small flower growing in the snow. A white oleander. "He looks mean," Kaelen noted, his chest vibrating against my back. "He looks fierce," I corrected. "He looks like he would burn the world down to keep the flower safe." Kaelen tightened his arms around me. He kissed my temple. "He would," he whispered. "Look closer," I said. "Up in the branches. To the left." Kaelen squinted. He stepped a little closer to the wall. I had hidden it well. It was just a small detail, camouflaged against the dark bark of a pine tree. A bird. A small, sharp-eyed hawk with gray feathers. It wasn't flying. It was perched, watching. Its head was cocked to the side, one eye fixed on the wolf and the flower below. I had given it a slightly annoyed expression, a furrowed brow that was unmistakably familiar. Kaelen went still. He reached out, tracing the painted bird with a calloused finger. He didn't touch the wet paint, just hovered over it. "Echo," he said. His voice was thick. "She's watching," I said softly. "She's part of the pack. She always will be." Kaelen let out a long breath. He dropped his hand. "She would have hated it," he said, a small smile touching his lips. "She would have called it sentimental trash. She would have said you got her beak wrong." "I know," I laughed, wiping a tear from my cheek. "That's why I painted it. To annoy her." Kaelen turned to me. He looked at the wolf. He looked at the flower. He looked at the bird. Then he looked at my stomach. "We are going to tell him about her," Kaelen said. "When he's old enough. We will tell him that his Aunt Mia was the bravest soldier we ever knew." "We will," I promised. Kaelen knelt down. It was a fluid motion, despite the stiffness in his knees from years of jumping out of moving cars. He placed his hands on my belly. The baby kicked. A strong, solid thump against his palm. Kaelen's eyes widened. "He's awake." "He smells the turpentine," I said. "Or he hears your voice. He likes your voice." Kaelen leaned forward. He pressed a kiss to the fabric of my dress, right over the kick. "Hey, Roman," he whispered. "The room is ready. The perimeter is secure. You can come out now." I ran my fingers through his hair. "Not yet. Give me 2 more weeks. I need to figure out how to assemble the crib without crying." Kaelen stood up. He looked at the room one last time. The bulletproof glass in the window. The reinforced lock on the door. The sensor blinking green in the corner. And the mural. The story of our survival painted in oil and grief and love. "Are we okay?" he asked. It was the question he asked me constantly. It was the question that lived in the back of his eyes every time he left the house. I looked at the mural. I looked at the gray bird watching over us. We had scars. My leg still ached when it rained. Kaelen still woke up reaching for a gun that wasn't there. Nikolai still drank a little too much vodka on the anniversary of the library raid. We weren't perfect. We weren't whole. But we were here. We are better than okay, I said. We are free. Kaelen nodded. He took my hand. Come on, he said. Umberto sent dinner, and Nikolai is coming over. He bought a pony. I told him the baby can't ride a pony for at least 3 years, but he insisted on stabling it at the compound. I laughed. Of course he did. We walked to the door. Kaelen paused. He looked back at the gray hawk in the tree. He nodded once. A silent salute. Then he turned off the light. The room went dark, but the painting remained. The wolf. The flower. The bird. Watching in the dark. We walked out into the hallway, leaving the ghosts behind us. Kaelen locked the door, checked the handle, and then wrapped his arm around my waist. We walked toward the light of the kitchen, toward the future we had fought for. The cage was open. The war was over. And we were finally, truly, home.